Yeah, I just had to deal with that too, my dude. I had to drop fucking 600 something or near $600 on the vet for my cat because the dumb motherfucker just wouldn't eat. So I totally understand where you're coming from there, buddy. Let me see here. All right. Where are we? So this will be a relatively shorter stream. It's not going to be like short, but it'll be relatively short compared to my recent streams where I've been going for like 6-7 hours. Let's see here. Where is my browser window? Let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Okay, here we are. Okay, we're gonna be doing basically just some like chill stuff. Oh wait, hold on. Is this what they're talking about? Okay, really quick. I gave up trying to find something on this, but there's like conspiracy theories of Taylor Swift. Okay. Fox News. Taylor Swift Pentagon. Can we get that? I wish I could get the original. Oh God, there was a headline I saw, and I guess it's real. Yeah, look, is Taylor Swift a Pentagon asset or Pentagon psyop? I guess we're gonna have to go to the Pac-Man show to get the actual segment here, unfortunately. But I thought that it was a fucking edit. I thought it was a joke, but I guess it's real.
Swift, what? David, Taylor Swift? Yes. You may recall that back in September, I did a story entitled Taylor Swift is registering more voters than anyone. And what I said at the time was,
can you guys just think, holy shit, have I really beaten this entire fucking game with every single fucking character? Hold on, did I just load up this game and I have every achievement? How do I see that? Oh my fucking God. That's actually kind of depressing that I've spent so much time playing this fucking game. 323 hours in a fucking $5 game or some shit. Okay. We're still gonna play it. But anyways, Taylor Swift going around and getting people to register to vote, and I guess she said something mean about Trump recently, and everyone's freaking the fuck out because of it. But like, the conservatives didn't really have a problem when Kid Rock was going around and sucking Trump's dick for everything, and getting his fucking P90 and mowing down a box of fucking Bud Light because they sent a promotional can to one person who happened to be trans. Like, nobody freaked out on the right about that, but like, oh no, Taylor Swift is telling people to register to vote. Now it's a Pentagon psyop. Okay.
Is that statistically speaking, if you look at the margins of victory in 2020 in some states, and you look at, which were very small, and you look at the number of people who follow Taylor Swift and who are registering to vote thanks to her encouragement, it's not impossible that Taylor Swift's voter registration activism could turn a state in 2024. Fox News doesn't like this, and many right-wingers are furious. They are going fully against Taylor Swift, suggesting that it may be a psyop, some suggesting that she's a lesbian, which, by the way, I don't know what being a lesbian has to do with voter registration. Maybe they can explain it to me. Take a look at this segment from Jesse Waters' program yesterday, interviewing a former FBI agent.
Wait, when was this posted? 2 weeks ago. Why am I only now hearing about this stupid shit?
Do not like that Taylor Swift is registering people to vote.
And such, immeasurable amount of followers, she can potentially single-handedly swing voters because of just the amount of followers that she potentially can influence. So the answer is yes, Jesse.
Yeah, because when she posted the link to the vote.org, it's like hundreds of thousands of young Taylor Swift fans all of a sudden registered to vote.
Oh no, not young people voting.
Fear is palpable. People are seeing what Taylor Swift says, and they are registering to vote. What a tragic situation. We must stop this.
I wonder who got to her from the White House or from wherever. Who makes that initial handshake? Is it the binder?
Well,
the what?
The administration has what they consider a perception optics management team, and those are professionals that go out and identify those people who may be unsuspecting, whether with knowledge or without knowledge, to do these type of campaigns. Now,
she doesn't even know what she's doing. She may, without even being conscious of it, realize what she's doing. Oh, she's telling people register to vote. Sounds pretty straightforward, actually.
Now, it is possible that Taylor Swift, quite frankly, does not know that.
Like, taking all of the agency away from Taylor Swift, like it's easier just to say, oh, she wants people to vote than it is to do any of that other like cringe shit. Like Taylor Swift MAGA. Heard something. Are you all okay? Everyone freaked out because she said something mean about MAGA people. Let's see what she actually said.
So prior to the 2018 midterms, Taylor Swift was notably and publicly political during the 2016 presidential election, especially given the outcome. But then, in an Instagram post in October of 2018, she publicly endorsed two Democratic candidates running in her home state of Tennessee and said she would vote against Republican Marsha Blackburn. She also talked about this in her documentary as well. And for some conservatives, it was downright unconscionable that she would actually voice her opinions. How dare she?
I'm sure Taylor.
Why are the closed captions so far behind? As if there's like a actual person sitting there transcribing what they're hearing in real time. Is there not an AI doing this? No, I know that there's an AI doing this. So why is it the same amount of delay that you would expect in a live, setting with a person with a stenography machine or some shit like that?
Swift has nothing or doesn't know anything about her. And let's say that I like Taylor's music about 25% less now.
There's a big difference between these political statements by Taylor Swift and Kanye. Taylor Swift was a virtue signal to try to preserve her reputation among her peers.
Taylor Swift, I love your music. Personally, Kanye West, I'm a bigger fan of his. I wish you would have not done this. Stay away from politics.
Well, it turned out that last one didn't age so well. But that aside,
Fair.
Swift has become a little bit more vocal since those midterms. I mean, she advocated for LGBTQ plus rights at the Video Music Awards in 2019. She endorsed Joe Biden for president in 2020. And in 2022, she posted some concerns about the impact of the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which was shared by millions of Americans. But it's not like she is some rabid Democratic activist. She is a very famous person who occasionally expresses her views, again, how dare she, and encourages people to get engaged. Down mode around this time.
And although neither the NFL nor Travis Kelce were
Taylor Swift's achievements. 1. Donates to charities when she's not attending galas that benefit terrorist organizations. What is that? Helped the American economy more than Joe Biden has during his presidency. Single-handedly resurrected the struggling NFL as well as the career of Travis Kelce. Are these people okay, dude? What the fuck does none of these make any sense whatsoever.
needs Taylor around. Apparently, the Democrats do, because make no mistake about it, Taylor Swift is clearly a tool.
Taylor Swift is going to come out in the presidential election, and she's going to mobilize her fans.
So is Swift a front for a covert political agenda? Primetime obviously has no evidence. If we did, we'd share it. But we're curious, because the pop star who endorsed Biden is urging millions of her followers to vote.
Guys, I mean,
Okay, we'll keep watching the Pac-Man thing.
That she is being utilized in a covert manner to swing voters. But the bottom line is that the Biden administration is savvy, identifying how many followers and how many voters potentially she can influence with either right information or misinformation. She certainly can swing the voters.
Yeah. And that is absolutely terrifying to these right wingers. Now, let's be super, it's not conspiratorial to recognize that if this were some right wing country singer, Fox News would be singing their patriotic praises for supporting democracy and civic participation. Their reaction would be very different if they suspected that whoever was saying, hey, go register to vote, was going to be useful to the right. And by the way, this is what happened with RFK Jr., okay?
RFK.
When RFK Jr.'s candidacy was seen...
Well, is RFK, did he drop out of the race yet? RFK Jr. RFK Jr. mulls running for president as libertarian as he struggles with ballot access. RFK Jr. says Trump team did ask him about running mate slot. Damn, son. He has not dropped out. That's crazy. Fucking Ron DeSantis dropped out before RFK. That's insane.
As bad for Biden and good for Trump because RFK was running as a Democrat against Joe Biden. He was on Fox multiple times a week talking about how great he is and how the Democratic Party is doing him so wrong. As soon as RFK Jr. said, hey, you know what? Instead of running as a Democrat, I'm going to run as an independent. And as soon as the polling showed, hey, this guy is taking at least as much support from Trump as he is from Biden, one attack interview from Sean Hannity, and then down 90% in terms of the attention that Fox News is giving him. So this isn't about the principle of, oh, celebrities registering people is bad. No. The perception that this is bad for Trump is what they're worried about. And all you need to remember is that one side knows it benefits from lower turnout. Republicans know that they benefit from lower turnout. And just think of the math. It's very simple math. One Republican tactic is make it harder to vote early, reduce voting hours, reduce polling places. Imagine that you calculate, if we work to close polling places in Georgia, we can dissuade 40,000 people from voting, 25,000.
Gotta be honest, I didn't expect a Taylor Swift is a Fed conspiracy. Bro, you know what? There is no guessing what's going to happen. There's no point in making, like people used to say, oh, I didn't have this on my 2021 bingo sheet. I didn't have this on my 22, bingo sheet. There's no point in even making bingo sheets anymore because these motherfuckers are crazy. You're never, ever, ever, ever going to get, you're not gonna get a fucking bingo. You're not gonna get a blackout on that shit for sure.
Of whom are Democrats and 15,000 of whom are Republicans. By doing this, we help Republicans by 10,000 votes, right? So if that's the action you can take, 10,000 votes that you can help your candidate by with the closure of early voting places is much more useful if there's only 900,000 registered voters versus 1 million. It's simple math. 10,000 is a larger percentage of 900,000 than of 1 million. So if you can hold down voter registration, the 10,000 vote gift that you can generate with early polling closures helps your candidate more. It's simple math. They know it. They're terrified of Taylor Swift. I'm not a fan of her music, but I think what she is doing is absolutely fantastic. Yes, register to vote. What's wrong with that? And then decide who to vote for. And
man, poor Taylor can't catch a fucking break from anyone, can she? Like, it feels like men aren't allowed to like her music, or they, like, a lot of men feel this weird compulsion to say, like, I hate Taylor Swift's music. Oh man. Or she, like, just have like weird little strange criticisms of her. Right. So it makes it really hard to like just say like, I'm not a fan of her music without looking at that person being like, okay, Redditor. Like, her music's not my type of music, but I can respect it. Right. I can respect the fucking hustle. Holy shit, that woman's is she a billionaire yet? She has to be, right? Taylor Swift net worth 2024, 1.1 billion. Yeah, she's like an actual self-made billionaire, dude, But she's got the fact that she's hot going for her. My guy.
Implicit in all of this is the assumption that the people who register to vote based on Taylor Swift's activism are more likely to vote for Biden than for Trump. Now, I don't know if that's true. It seems totally plausible that it's true, but I don't know that to be true. They seem convinced that it is the case, which is why they are so terrified by the activism of Taylor Swift. We're going to take a very quick break. As I said at the top of the show, unfortunately, violence of different kinds is going to be a theme on today's show, and we will pick it up with that theme right after this short break. If you're struggling...
Okay. She had to release her songs because Soros bought them before she could? Soros? Oh, man. Pentagon, and there's Pentagon and... There's Soros conspiracies with her, huh? I get VIP tickets to a concert just to meet her and flirt for shits and giggles and probably just listen to Spotify during the actual concert. Bro, you're going to flirt with someone whose boyfriend is Travis Kelce, who's probably 6'6" and like 300 pounds of pure muscle? He's a tight end, right? Yeah, he's a tight end. There are a lot of positions in football that I wouldn't fight, but like high up on that list would be a tight end. I wouldn't fuck with a tight end, okay? That motherfucker, like, fucking tight ends are big motherfuckers. 6'5". Oh, I wish it like told us what his specs were, like his fucking weight and shit, height and weight. 250 pounds of pure fucking muscle, bro. He's from the same city as you? Oh, okay, gotcha. Fuck Travis and fuck the Chiefs. Is it the Chiefs and the Ravens going to the Super Bowl? Super Bowl. Oh, it's the 49ers? Fuck, who am I supposed to root for, man? Damn it. Who am I supposed to go for, man? I guess I'm going to have to go for the 49ers because I don't think that there's anyone on the Chiefs that I like. And there's only one person on the 49ers that I even know plays for them, and that's Tabor. Tabor snapping. This the fucking Destiny Orbiter. So, man, the Chiefs have been there in the last, like the last 4 out of the 5 years. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, man, I haven't paid attention to football in so long. I might try and throw like a Super Bowl party or something. Since I'm going to probably be moving away from my city, might as well have one last hurrah or huzzah, hurrah, one last huzzah. That's that right. Whatever. Taylor Swift brings a different demographic to football. Let's see what Fox News is coping about this time. This is like my big criticism of conservatives, I guess. There's just so much grievance in everything that they talk about, you know? There's so much grievance. You're moving out of AK to a real state? Where the fuck do you think I live? Wait, you you mean Arkansas, don't you? Because AK is the abbreviation for Alaska. Okay? AK is Alaska. AR is Arkansas. I live in Texas. I was just born in Arkansas. I almost like said something in a way here. I'll DM you because I was about to say something that would have come across way fucking different than I wanted it to. No, Arkansas is AR, my friend. I was like, why the fuck does this guy think I live in Alaska? Here, let's listen to this for a second.
It's called Unbreakable. It's excellent. And Jay Glazer is here. Jay, great to see you.
You too, brother. How we doing?
All right, I got to talk a little pop culture first. What has, for a guy that goes inside the numbers also and picks up the phones and goes to practices and training camps, how much does the Taylor Swift thing matter this year?
It's great. Are you kidding me? Look, Taylor Swift is, first of all, she's authentic. And, you know, she brings, obviously, a different demographic. I think it's fantastic. She's a genius at what she does. The NFL is a genius in how they market things. It couldn't be better. There's nothing to hate on here. I think there's just...
Okay, sorry, I had to type there.
Taylor Swift thing matter this year?
It's great. Are you kidding me? Look, Taylor Swift is, first of all...
Also, why is Taylor Swift... Wait, hold on. Is she doing the halftime show? Is that why they're saying that she's... halftime show 2024. Usher? Usher? Who the fuck is this? I know who Usher is. I don't know who Tiesto. DJ. He's a DJ. It's just that I haven't thought of Usher. I haven't thought of Usher in... I can't even remember the last time I thought about Usher. It's just like such a strange, of all the people that could headline the Super Bowl of all things. You know? This isn't new. Jessica Simpson got the same treatment when she was dating Tony Romo and they focused on her instead of the game. That's not what I'm talking about, to be clear. I'm saying that conservatives started fucking hating the NFL when people started taking a knee, okay? You know? When people started taking a knee, that was it for conservatives. They had to lose their fucking minds. Oh no! People are using their freedom of speech. And I don't like it because their freedom of speech goes against the guy that I want to suck the cock of. So that's what conservatives have been like sewing the fuck out over since like 2016. Obsessing over NFL ratings. When I don't think that people are stopping watching the NFL because of political reasons, it's probably people are starting to like care less about anything going on cable, television, just anything. Which is why all of these sports, all of these different, like cable, establishments are struggling to find a way to reach internet audiences because that's where everyone want to watch their shit, right? So like that's way more easy to attribute than fucking, oh no, fucking whatever his fucking name on the 49ers or former quarterback, I can't remember his name, took a fucking knee and for some reason that ruined his entire fucking career, right? Yeah, there's going to be people sewing the fuck out over, oh no, Tony Romo is dating Jessica Simpson, which I had no idea that happened. But it's just like, I understand that there's like pop relationships and stuff and people are going to focus on that. It's like coping and seething and trying to, huff copium about why their ratings are going up, why their ratings are going down, because you just hate them for a political reason, right? Yeah, Kaepernick. He wasn't like the best quarterback ever, but like the kneeling ruined his career.
Oh, she's authentic. And, she brings obviously a different demographic. I think it's fantastic. She's a genius at what she does. The NFL is a genius in how they market things. It couldn't be better. There's nothing to hate on here. I think there's just all love, in my opinion. Plus, look, Travis Kelce, I've known him for years. He used to come train out at our gym at Unbreakable, and the dude's never changed. I just talked about authenticity. He has never changed. It's never affected him, and I'm happy for him, man. It's a lot of times good things do happen to good people, and Travis is one of those good people.
And last week's ratings, 49ers Packers without her was up 31% for Fox, so that's pretty significant. Ratings are up.
And I'm happy for him, man. It's a lot of times good things do happen to good people, and Travis is one of those good people.
And last week's ratings, 49ers Packers without her was up 31% for Fox, so that's pretty significant. Ratings are also through the roof. I want to talk, if we can, about some of the coaching changes, because
I'm just curious. Not rankings, ratings. Regular season games averaged 17.9 million viewers. Second highest since they were tracked in 1995. Nice. Football and tennis are the only two sports I could ever get into watching. I could never get into watching fucking baseball. I could never get into I really can't. I can't sit down and watch a basketball game, like a NBA game. Can't fucking do it. It is just I don't ever understand what's supposed to be exciting and what's supposed to just be like not exciting. What's just like regular play, right? Meanwhile, every single, like, I understand what's going on in NFL plays and shit, right? Or football plays. Being able to watch the NFL on Twitch has been the best thing ever, honestly. Wait, do they stream on Twitch? Really? He was above average in a West Coast system, but he had a winning record and was blackballed from the NFL. Teams that needed Teams that needed quarterbacks for the next 2 or 3 years took shit quarterbacks compared to Kaepernick, because it was just too much bad press, which is fucking insane. You know? The Thursday Prime games are streamed on Twitch. Damn, I wish I wasn't fucking permabanned so I could, sit down and watch a fucking football game. But, oh well.
One guy doesn't have a job right now, and might be the second winningest coach in history, and it is Bill Belichick. How do you explain that?
Look, he's the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, but things change. And I was saying it all year long. I didn't really see too many landing spots from him. And the reason why is the way that
Oh, shit. You know what? I was so curious about, was it last year? When did Tom Brady leave New England? What year was this? In 2020. Damn, he was there for 20 fucking years. Patriots record by year. So when he started, I'm pretty sure, was 2012 or 2001 or something like that, right? Yeah, that's when he took over. Wait. Okay, so let's see here. 9-7, 14-2, 14-2, 10-6, 12-4, 16-0. Did they have a perfect season? 11-5, 10-6, 14-2, 13-3, 12-4. Very good seasons. Very good seasons. And then they just had, I guess they had a decent year here. But I guess, without Tom Brady, that shit fell off hard, dude. Holy fuck. I was so curious about that when I heard about that, but I never actually sat down and Googled it. Yeah, by Eli Manning's Giants. Let's go. Eli Manning, the fucking Patriot Slayer.
culture is shifting. You see these teams now wanting a different guy than what Bill Belichick did. And Bill Belichick, look, he obviously rules with a different fist, but there's a lot that comes with that. So you look the NFC Championship game, guys like Dan Campbell. I keep using this word authentic, but he's so authentic. What D'Amico Ryans just did down in Houston. The guys like Sean McVay and the Mike Tomlins and Mike McDaniels, and I think even this new hiring shift, the Raheem Morris and Dave Canales, they want guys who are coming in who are going to be more positive, more, hey, I believe in you, instead of more, I'm going to beat you down. And, I think with Belichick, when you bring him in, you're not just getting a coach. You're bringing in somebody that's going to say, okay, I'm going to change this whole entire culture. You're probably going to win there, but there's going to be a lot of change in there. And I think a lot of owners are saying, I don't know if I want to just have a complete upheaval right now.
Yeah, I guess so. So you got a couple of spots still open. We'll see where it goes. Let's talk about these games and the game that you guys have. Lions.
49ers quarterback was taken in the last round of the 2022 draft. Damn. Or was he taken last overall? That's gotta be rough. Isn't that kind of the same with Tom Brady though too? He was like a sleeper agent, and then all the fucking sudden they put him in on the Super Bowl, and then he just starts fucking tearing shit up, fucking taking everyone the fuck out. Oh shit! Hello, I wasn't even paying attention to my game. I thought I paused.
Against the 49ers. If I put up 50 states, the map of the U.S., the only place, and maybe it's just Northern California, that wants the 49ers to win, outside diehard 49er fans are San Francisco, because most of the country loves the Lions story. Tell me how these two teams match up.
Man, these two teams match up like two heavyweight punchers, and that's the thing. They're the most physical teams in the NFC. I talked about Dan Campbell, and look, I've known Dan since he was a rookie player. in the NFL. And he's played the same way, he's coached the same way, and it's the same. You saw, like, we just talk about him, like, believing in these guys, loving these guys up, but they play with his attitude. He wants to fight you. He wants to turn it into a fight at every moment, but the 49ers do the same thing. They are the most physical teams in the league. They're not, finesse teams. I love it. I love when kind of two, heavyweight title contenders get together and just get to duke it out.
I love the fact that a couple of years ago they were winless. I mean, winless. And we used to watch his press conference, and he used to go to bat for his guys.
Detroit deserves this.
Huh?
Yep. And not only that, Detroit deserves this, but also you saw, like, Dan would talk about it, and I've been out there at his practices, and he went to
we're not going to.
And
Clark with the pregame show. And Jay, you got your podcast. What
almost broke you but couldn't. And
Okay, gotcha. We're good on that. All right. Oh shit, we didn't even look at all the people who are. So we had Usher. Who else? They got Reba. Holy shit. Wait, hold on. I have a question. Without Googling it, does anybody off the top of their head know an Usher song? I don't think I know an Usher song off the top of my head. There's one song that I always think is Usher, or like in my head, I associate it with Usher, even though I know it's not Usher. I also do not know the name of that song. I don't know the name of that song. I just know what it sounds like, but it's 50 Cent. But for some reason, I always think Usher. Pop the Glock by Oofy is produced by Usher. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's just a strange. Like, when was the last time Usher had a top 10 hit? I would be less surprised if Post Malone was the fucking headliner, dude. You DM me a cat video? Oh, okay, I'll check it out one sec. Why do all these things come up and block the fucking... Bro, Bro, I'm gonna, like, go and take a shit during the halftime show. I just don't care about any of these people at all. Like, I like, no shade at them, I guess. Like, it's just, like, not my kind of music, like, any of it.
Oh. Hi, how you doing?
Oh, he's talking to you guys.
Whoa, chill. Wait, did I hear that right? Why is it so fucking loud also?
Say. Oh. Hi, how you doing?
Oh, he's talking to you guys.
Jeez.
Are you stuck?
I love that one. I've seen this one before. Well, hi.
What did you just say?
Hey.
Where's the catnip?
You good?
You're adopted.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good shit. Oh man, you know, people make jokes about like, oh man, you know, people use the internet for watching cat videos. Yes, I actually do. I love cat videos. I watch cat videos all the fucking time, and I'm not even fucking joking about it. Okay, when me and my girlfriend, We've sat down, we've watched like 4 episodes of SVU in a row, right? It's 11:40, not quite time to go to bed. Uh-oh, time for us to put on a 20-minute fucking cat meme compilation. Let's fucking go. You know we're doing that shit. Sometimes we'll even stay up a little bit late. Watch a second one, dude. I fucking love cat videos.
The Taylor Swift Super Bowl isn't making everyone happy because right-wing dinguses like Vivek Ramaswamy are claiming this whole thing is a conspiracy, suggesting that the Super Bowl will be rigged for the Chiefs to set the stage for Taylor Swift's Biden endorsement. What? That's whack.
That's so fucking stupid. Oh my God. One thing that if I was the supreme ruler of all of humanity and nothing I did was unethical and everything that I did was completely unimpeachable, morally, legally, right? And everyone would just comply with my wishes. You know, one of the first fucking things that I would do is I would create a eugenics program and I would breed out the whatever gene makes someone more likely to become a conspiracy theorist, I would breed that out. All right. I would target that gene with fucking gene therapy, fucking take it out. Because the conspiracism has got to end. Because we get retarded shit like this, and it's fucking killing me. Every single day, I see stupider and stupider fucking conspiracies, and it has to stop.
Jack, come on.
Sunglasses and all, thank you for that. If you go to the dark corners of the internet, you can find a litany of off-the-wall conspiracy theories.
And the latest to gain traction surrounds the NFL, the White House, Taylor Swift, pharmaceutical companies, all conspiring to get President Biden reelected this fall. Except this theory isn't just rattling around on Newsmax or your uncle's Facebook page. It's actually literally being amplified by Fox News.
Now there's an online plea circulating that is begging people to become Niners fans for the next 2 weeks, just so it doesn't raise
Oh, damn, I wasn't
Travis
paying
Kelce,
attention.
a.k.a.
Fuck.
Mr. Pfizer's star power, along with, of course, Taylor Swift.
That's persuadable power, and this administration is locked dead set on harnessing that.
But why alienate the?
1 second. Let me just pull something up here really quick. Sorry. Donald Trump, Kid Rock. Oh, wow. Trump, Kid Rock, Tucker, and Dana White, UFC 295 entrance. Kid Rock says he and Donald Trump confronted Bud Light. Kid Rock doubles down on Trump's support. Oh, sorry. This is a good video. Fox News. Something I saw earlier today. Let's see. Scroll down. Oh, wait. Are you telling me that Fox News likes it when people are nice to their guy? Changed his tune. Iconic rapper Snoop Dogg praised former President Trump after previously condemning him and his supporters. I have nothing but love and respect for Donald Trump, Snoop Dogg. Wait a second. Let's rewind this video super quick and just hear all the things that they're saying about Taylor Swift and see if that rings true to what they were saying about Snoop Dogg.
It's actually literally being amplified by Fox News.
Now there's an online plea circulating that is begging people to become Niners fans for the next 2 weeks, just so it doesn't raise Travis Kelce, a.k.a. Mr. Pfizer's star power, along with, of course, Taylor Swift.
Why is Travis... Wait, I'm sorry. I totally missed that fucking schizo shit a second ago. Why is Travis Kelce Mr. Pfizer? I'm sorry. Did the poor guy get vaccinated? And you guys just don't like that?
Persuadable power, and this administration is locked dead set on harnessing that.
But why alienate your fans, the Swifties? You know, they come across from every political ideology. Why put yourself in one area?
Please don't believe it.
Why would Snoop Dogg say that about Donald Trump? Why would he alienate his own fans like this? Where are the fucking stories on that one, Fox? Holy shit.
Everything Taylor Swift says, we're all begging you.
Joining us now is CNN senior media reporter Oliver Dorsey. I'm chuckling, but it's also kind of horrifying, but also kind of hilarious that they're trying to get a bunch of people to support the San Francisco team in alignment with Nancy Pelosi. Can you explain what exactly is going on here?
It's hard to explain because it's so absurd, but the idea, generally speaking, is that the NFL is in cahoots with Taylor Swift and rigging the Super Bowl to set the stage for Taylor Swift then to endorse Joe Biden for the Democrats and the establishment supposedly to wield her star power against Donald Trump in the 2024 election. Now, of course, this is absurd. It sounds absurd to the people in reality, but we shouldn't dismiss it because there are a lot of people, and not so insignificant amount of people, who end up believing these ideas, who view them as attractive. Remember the QAnon conspiracy theory, for instance, which was equally as absurd, if not more. A lot of people ended up believing that conspiracy theory because they're locked in this media universe which feeds them information that supports it. And for people in the Fox News universe and really in other parts of the web, they're being told quite literally that there's a psychopath in this country.
Did this guy just say caught in the web? Is this guy a DGGer?
Parts of the web, they're being told quite literally that there's a
Bro, I think this guy's a DGGer.
happening in this country in plain sight involving Taylor Swift to rig the 2024 election. Sounds absurd, but we shouldn't dismiss it because people do view these ideas as attractive.
All is lost if Roger Goodell has to field a question on a serious question.
The Pentagon has
on
fielded
this.
a question on this.
Okay.
Is Roger Goodell still the commissioner? Holy shit.
The thing about this is that it might be attractive to a few million people, a sliver of the country, but you do wonder how politically advantageous it is to go to war with Taylor Swift. You know, if you're Donald Trump, I don't think you want to go to war with Taylor Swift. She has a huge legion of fans, an army of supporters who, far...
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. You don't want to go to war with Taylor Swift. You don't want to go to Taylor Swift. She has an army of fans. Bro, politics is a fucking joke. I give up. We're turning into a fucking gaming channel. No, you know what? We're turning into a cat memes. Yeah, fuck this. We're just going to this is the new content, guys. I changed my fucking mind. I changed my mind completely. Okay? Cat meme compilation. This is what we're doing now.
The flavors are melting on my tongue.
See, this is so much better. This is so much better for our mental health. This is so much better for our soul, honestly.
Hi. Bro Electric Cat.
You know what's sad? I'm pretty sure me and my girlfriend watched this exact same fucking video. I've seen every single one of these, and I feel like this is the exact same video me and my girlfriend watched like last week. Like I'm nearly certain it is. Oh yeah, I should watch that. A classic? Let's see.
Stop.
Oh yeah, I've seen this one.
Stop it. Stop. Stop, you're scaring me. You're scaring me. I said no.
I haven't seen this, whatever.
Stop being ratchet. Get off me. We're done. We are over. Go. Stop.
God, that looks... God, if that doesn't look just like my fucking cat, though. 1 second. Let me grab this little bitch, okay? And we'll watch the open panel next. 1 second. Let me grab this cat. Tell me that cat and this cat don't look exactly the fucking same. Tell me they don't look exactly the fucking same. I'm sorry, I'm yelling in your ear. And you were asleep. I'll go put you back. Oh. Oh, man. Okay. The regular panel was so bad that Alec made non-smoker look reasonable. That's why I put the focus on the open when I sent it to you. Okay, well, let's check it. I actually didn't get to watch it at all off stream because I was busy doing some other shit. So
come together to clash. It seems like for the most part, they really just tell the higher ups that, hey, there's a middle ground to be had here. And
it's all
thank
it's all
God for
been
that.
taught in the media, really. I mean,
their clash, their clash is they sat down.
That's out.
They sat down around a table and played spades, and waited for other people to figure it out. They're like, we're just gonna sit here and play spades till other people figure it out.
That's my thing. Is like, I'm friends with a real doomer. People here probably know Ranger and Rogue. He's a real doomer in terms of fucking. He thinks.
is this like the best place to start, or is this like a little bit too far back or a little bit too far forward?
Dude, people went out. People do. I think even the communists in the room, like that's one of the things that they thrive on is like the will of the people. It will out at the end of the day. And in most systems, especially one that allows as much personal individual freedom, in my opinion, is the United States. People on the ground are not going to allow this to become anything more than what it is right now. I don't.
Whose panel was it again?
What Vigilante has to say.
no one cares what you want. If you fucking yelled for 2 hours, suck a cock.
While watching the Royal Rumble.
Me too. I like Hippie. Hey, Hippie actually reached out to make sure that like we shared some research links, and he made sure he knew what he was talking about before he started yelling.
Oh, so you cheated?
I got the info in a day.
All right, Vigilante, what's up?
All right, I'm going to skip forward. This might cause stream to dip for a second because Twitch player is stupid for me for some reason.
Keep pretending you're independent. It'll be fun.
I'm not independent. I'm a conservative.
No, I'm talking to Vigilante.
Bro,
Keep pretending.
And said that America has never been a racist country.
You wear way too much camouflage to vote for Biden.
I forgot about that. I was thinking about voting for Nikki Haley, but as soon as I realized that she wanted to cut funding for
Only Democrats and Jeb say that.
Then what were you saying? What happened? What did I say?
Vote for Nikki Haley. That I would vote for Nikki Haley. It's Democrats and you.
That is
the truest fucking womp womp. Okay, listen.
Don't you fucking dare leave me out.
Here's the thing, Blizzard.
Nikki Haley
You're
is
not
more
gonna fucking win without independence. You're not going to win without independence.
That's really.
Listen, the real thing is we're actually conservative. Nikki Haley's more conservative than Trump, so I'm voting for Nikki Haley.
Keep pretending you're independent. That'll be fun.
I'm not independent. I'm a conservative.
No, I'm talking to Vigilante.
Bro,
he said he was considering voting for either Biden or Haley. Like, good luck pretending to be an independent.
that's a lot. That's a lot of independence, dude. That's
but you operate in the same world that I do, right? When Trump wins the nomination, you're going to vote for Trump, right?
Oh yeah,
100%. Here's the thing,
yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's so retarded.
I'm a
That's the answer.
Hold on, I just got an interesting chat. Can I say something about Nikki Haley? Apparently, she wants to raise retirement to the age of 70 for Social Security.
Yeah.
Oh, really quick. Alec Gunter, if you guys don't remember, was on that episode of Jubilee with Destiny, where he was ultra fucking combative to black people that didn't agree with him. And I think he just, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe he did go this far, but I'm pretty sure he just stopped short of calling them Uncle Toms. So like, this is like the level of lefty that we're talking about here.
What's up with that?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Lifespan, life expectancy
Oh my
has
fucking
increased.
God.
Average life
Welcome to
expectancy
politics
has
on the right.
We have to.
Life expectancy
literally
has
have to do
increased by
that.
over 8 years.
I don't
since
care.
It start. Okay, that's fine that you don't care, but you asked me
don't
why I
care?
think. So why did
Cool.
you ask the question?
Are you any
If
more
don't care.
able to work after 65?
Yes.
How?
Yes.
Yes.
Statistically, now most 65-year-olds are far more capable of working than they were 10 years
Can you show
ago.
me the data on that?
Yes, the average life expectancy.
Oh man, I like Jeb. He really is like a fucking traditional conservative. Like, yeah, if you're 65, you should still be able to work, bro. I'm sorry. Like, at that point, like, Social Security is something that we ought to have for people who have been working their entire lives, who have been paying into the system, and, you know, now they're getting old and they should be able to fucking chill out for the last couple of years of their life. And now we're going to like sit here and fucking say like, oh no, you really should be like working until you fucking croak. Go sit on the fucking assembly line, you fucking cuck. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this will be one of my like more hardcore lib stances. We should be like, if anything, even if he's saying like, yeah, we should be increasing the age because we have to, under the current circumstances, we might have to. Let's try and change the circumstances so we do not have to. Holy shit.
Has risen.
I just don't want to live in a society where we still make people over the age of 65 work. I don't like
Okay, I don't want to live in a society.
Right now, people work till 67.
Stop.
Like, right now.
Stop. I don't want to live in a society where we outsource retirement to the fucking government, but here the fuck we are, dude. Unfortunately, people don't know how to save in their own fucking 401k.
Outsource retirement to the government. That's not outsourcing.
That's what social.
I mean, if we brought back.
That's not the government's job. What do you mean? It is outsourcing. Your retirement is not the government's job.
Outsourcing? No,
Yes.
we're not outsourcing it to Mexico.
What do you think?
You're outsourcing it to the government.
Let me ask you something. When you pay yourself money, do you consider that a deposit, or do you consider that nothing
you're
happening?
Right. You're right. When I pay myself money, that's true.
I
But
give it to
when
the
senior
government.
citizens,
So when the USA pays itself money,
I'll wait. So when senior citizens contribute 3 times what they're getting back in benefits on average, that I would say is not a deposit. Because my deposits, I get 100% back.
If that's what the case is right now, then
When I put money in my
Actually, you get more than
401k,
that if
I
it's,
get
if
more.
you invest.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you invest, you actually get more.
I'm on
we
track to
educated
make.
people on how to invest.
Yeah. I'm on track with very little
wouldn't have to do
contribution to turn $350,000 in lifetime contributions into $1.7 million. Unfortunately, my Social Security is on track to do the opposite. So that's why we need to raise the retirement age.
half-baked takes. There's no reason to invest.
this is why we should create like a social wealth fund instead of like Social Security. There are better options out there. It's just saying like let the free market decide. I don't like that argument. I would rather have just like, hey, why don't we like create a better version of this that would actually, you know, instead of just collecting tax money and then distributing it, collect tax money, put it into some, you know, big fund that is, you know, tied to a bunch of different, you know, things, kind of like a 401k, but at a societal level, and then have that pay for a whole bunch of fucking things. But
when you could just join the military and become 100% disabled and just use that for the rest of your life.
There's plenty. There's still plenty of reason to invest.
I have a lot of criticism as to how we
a
take
meme.
care of our
It was a
veterans.
meme, Blizzard.
Yeah.
Social Security was a scam
I
to
remember
begin
him.
with.
Yes.
It was always a
What?
scam. The
Wait,
original
what?
retirement age.
Do you not want money from the government?
Alex doesn't realize that Social Security has been on the Republican policy fucking shelf for forever. This
No,
is always
Alex,
what it's going to come back to.
Warm-ups
They
has
haven't
repeatedly
addressed
supported money from the government. He wants effective
right.
money from the government, well-intentioned to serve the people, and Social Security was never that, is what he's saying.
Well, I'm not saying that either. What I'm saying is,
I have a question for the
Alex,
conservatives
Alex.
being retarded right now.
Let me ask Alex
What do
something
you
really
guys
quick
want?
first.
Wait, let's get to the warm-ups first.
Thank
then.
you. Thank you.
Alex.
Somebody with some sense. Thank you.
When Social Security was implemented, right? I think was it
Who is the guy
35?
talking right
I don't know what the
here?
year was.
Okay.
The average life expectancy in America was 63.
I don't
right?
give a shit.
Well, then you don't care about fucking anything. You don't care about the thing that you're advocating.
I don't think people over 65 should have to work.
Okay,
Why?
so
I think they've worked their fair share.
Oh man, he doesn't even understand how to make an argument for the fucking thing. I bet you're advocating for. Like, if you wanted to make a really good argument for it, like, people, like, once you get to a certain age, you probably like have a diminished capacity to care for yourself, to take care of your bills, to work, especially in more labor-intensive jobs. Generally speaking, people who are working at 65 have probably been working for a huge portion of their life. So they probably already have like all the stress associated with that. They very likely, if you're still working at 65, you are likely someone that doesn't have a whole bunch of a retirement savings. So yeah, we should probably have some sort of benefit for these people so that they can, you know, either work less or so that they can you know, if like actually stop working and, you know, have, you know, enjoy their fucking golden years, you know? Not playing Pal World, I'm unsubbing. I thought that was a free to play game. It's fucking $30. No, thank you. For a game that's going to die in like, you know, 6 months, right? If it's not dead in 6 months, come to me then. Also, you're not even subbed, Killer Sieg. I don't think, I can't remember the last time you threw money at me, you fucking cuck.
Don't you?
Don't try
why
and
don't
fucking
you just
pressure me.
Smoker and be a fucking communist?
Grandparents, huh? What about your grandparents? What about you? When you turn 65, you want to retire?
What about all the grandparents killings that's happening?
Hold on, I want to hear Vigilante's question.
I don't know yet.
Alex is asking a retard
I'll
question.
figure that out later.
Vigilante sounds like he has a good question. Let's listen to his question.
Okay, so here's the thing. You guys, some of you are bitching about the fact that it's like fucking Social Security's giving our money back to us, which is literally what it is.
That's
What
not
would you
what I-
rather our fucking taxes go to?
Thank you.
Here's my okay.
Hello, he's going crazy.
So Social Security provides a net negative benefit
just
to
like
those
me, by the
who
way.
Social Security on average adds a severe net negative benefit to those who contribute to it on average. I would rather my money go to bolstering food stamps
Fair
because
point,
that
Sieg.
provides a
Fair
net positive
point.
benefit. I would
Keep those
rather it
feet
go to
pics
bolstering
coming.
WIC, which provides a net positive benefit. I would rather it go to unemployment insurance and bolstering that because that adds a net positive benefit. Disability insurance because that adds a net positive benefit. I would rather us cut the 140 plus federal welfare programs into very few robust ones and then make one of those a program that ensures that people are educated on early investing and credit recovery so that the government is helping the people.
Okay, man, I agree with everything that he just said. I think I would rather there be some really robust ones that more people have access to that are really, really effective than a whole bunch of, you know, convoluted systems that are really difficult to get access to. And, you know, this system, you have to have, you know, this and this qualifier. But if you are missing this one, then you have to go to this other. Like, there are a whole bunch of really stupid fucking things that are massively, like, our massive bureaucratic state. Yeah, I understand that. And I can agree with a lot of that. But, like, man, I do think that a replacement for... I don't think that an adequate replacement for Social Security is an education program on how to invest, you know? Me and Jeb have a great convo here and out comes back in. One issue is there's overlap between federal programs, so some departments do the same shit. Yeah. And I like, so on that, I can agree.
Work in the privatized system that the government claims to support and allows them to navigate that better, because with far fewer dollars than you contribute to Social Security every year, if you contributed 1/5 of what you contribute to Social Security every year, no matter who you are, you would maximize about 3 times to 4 times, or materialize rather 3 to 4 times the benefit by the time you were done working that you would through Social Security.
May I ask the
People over
question?
65 to work.
So I can agree with most of that. Give me a second. I can agree with most of that. However, I would say with the caveat of large companies being required to have some sort of pension plan,
Sure.
that would be the only way I would be willing to forego Social Security.
Sure, that's great
Do you
legislative
want-
negotiation. I'd love to see that happen. That would be
Do
great.
you want people
Okay,
over
that's fair.
65 to work or not?
I think generally it would be better if they didn't, but I think it's on the individual to make
Okay,
sure.
then
they
we
do.
agree.
All right,
For Social Security.
let's go to Indy.
Fine, yes.
I mean, no, it's
Indy.
the second half.
Yes. Yes, Jeb.
He said maybe.
Huh?
Social Security. They can retire. Yes.
No, I think they can
No,
retire
why not?
without Social Security.
You said you don't want them to. What happened?
I don't want them to rely on Social Security.
Oh, okay. So
because
they
it
should
provides-
work over 65.
No.
No, why not?
If
You
they
said you don't
make
want them to have Social
irresponsible,
Security.
if they
So
make
should have Social Security,
irresponsible
yes?
decisions,
No.
then yeah, they're gonna have.
What
to.
happened? What happened?
Again,
Did they retire?
I mean, in case anybody was wondering what a false
No, answer
dichotomy
the
was,
question.
that's that.
Answer the question.
All right, so the question
Am I
will
going crazy?
remain
You're
unanswered.
inconsistent as fuck, man.
The question will remain unanswered. NDD, please go if you have something.
Thank
Jeb,
you.
about what you said when it comes
Question
to
remain unanswered.
all of those programs and things that you said that you would want.
Yeah.
Is the Conservative Party actually moving into that? Because when you look at it, it seems like they want to cut the food. They want to cut the food subsidies, and
Yeah.
they don't really support any type of education and what you're talking about that I've seen so
Oh, they don't support any kind of what do you call it? Any kind of replacement ever. That's the problem.
far.
So yeah, so what I would say is, in a general sense, you're right. Conservatives generally aim to cut, just in general. I think both parties aim to do generalized action. So the Democrat Party prefers to create more agencies, more programs to maximize benefit, and conservatives generally aim to cut. The issue is, I don't think either of those work. I think the conservative version of it works better because there are at least some conservatives who say we don't need to cut net benefit, we need to cut the number of agencies. Whereas when I look at Democrats, not many of them are, I've not heard of any actually, that say they simply want to bolster the programs that work. I've not heard one who doesn't want to bolster a program without adding another 2-3 programs to the list. So I think conservatives are closer to my
But isn't that
All I said is make it so people over 65 don't have to work. Just do that. Just do that. It's not that hard.
65. Why is it the line?
Social Security does that.
It does.
I want to drop it down to 60. Fuck it. Fuck it. Drop it down to 60.
Why not?
Social Security, hold on. Social Security recipients are dying on the fucking Walmart floor as greeters.
Give them
bro.
more
They're
then.
not making enough.
Give them more. Give them
Oh
more.
my
I don't
God.
care.
Okay.
Give the money. They're the elderly.
Sure.
They're only
Yes.
second to kids.
We'll
Give them
just
money.
materialize the
Get work.
money.
A bit.
Yes,
just
but
make
you're
it
A bit,
exist.
Jeb.
Pull it out of
Yeah.
your
Leave
ass.
it.
Get them the
And-
money.
Man.
The
I
kids
know.
work.
ND,
You should have let them die.
I'd like to engage with your question.
the money.
If it continues.
To further my question is the government afraid? Does it seem that both
Hey,
sides
one
of the
second, I gotta
government
answer
are
a phone
afraid
call.
to have some type of authority?
All right. Yeah. Okay. We're back. Sorry about that. I haven't talked to my mom in a couple of days, or like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So I felt obligated to answer that one. All right. Let's keep going.
Authoritative.
Oh, there's not
purpose
very
to
much
these
long,
programs, or
not
is it
much
just
longer in
not
this, is
giving them
there?
money?
I
Are you
think
okay with them having an authoritarian purpose?
no, I don't think you need to have an authoritarian purpose because a lot of these programs were made executively anyway. So you can act executively in ways that aren't at all inappropriate to mitigate them. I think the real issue is a lot of these like more nitty gritty welfare program reducing and optimizing issues, they don't do much.
How
in
much
the
more is
short
Alec
term.
going
They're
to say in
long-term
the
solutions,
next
and they
10
don't do much
minutes?
in terms of
Does he
headlines,
actually
so
like
no
go
one's
complete Spurg
incentivized to
mode?
act on them. So I think Democrats, they know they go up in the polls when they introduce a new program. And so they introduce a new program, and that gives them the bump, and they can help people.
What does the program,
What?
what does the program do?
It depends on the
wait.
program.
Wait 1 second.
If it's good, then that's great. They should
Yeah,
go
some of them. No,
It's good
some
policy.
of them are good, but a lot of
You're
them
right,
are not.
dude.
Okay,
Good
that's good
things are
policy
good.
then. They should go up in the
Good
polls.
things are good.
Hold on. I don't know how much more of this I want to do because I want to do more immigration and
Here's the thing.
research.
As
They deserve to go up in the polls. It's
As-
good.
That's
Alec,
probably
I think
the only remaining.
They're not
socialist
tricking
thing.
you.
I do want.
That's
I
good
do want
policy.
to.
God, one thing like when it comes to people like Alec Gunter and the smaller lefty, no, I was about to say the smaller lefty Twitch streamers, like lefty Twitch streamers in general, like I understand having very strong feelings about a specific policy. I understand having very strong feelings about wanting to cut those policies. But I don't understand, and this is something that I've recently talked about. I don't know if it's just, no, it is, it's about everyone, but I've talked about this recently in regards to lefties. I can't imagine having these very strong feelings, but also having just like zero curiosity about the world around you, right? There's just like zero curiosity about like how things work, right? They just should work, and they should work in the way that you want them to. And if you have a generalized idea about how they work, that is basically the same thing as being an expert in them. So you should be able to like make strong prescriptions about these things because you have a feeling that these things are good, even though they might have severe fucking problems and might need to be axed and replaced, I'll never understand the lack of curiosity shit. It feels like it is so much better to how do I say this? Like, I don't know if it's like a personality type or if it's if it's an intelligence thing. I genuinely don't know. This isn't supposed to be like just calling everyone but me retarded, right? Because I don't think that I'm a particularly smart person. But one thing I do think I have is a skeptical enough mind and a curious enough mind to go out of my way to make sure to look into something before I have like a super strong stance on something, right? And I also have the curiosity when it comes to like looking inward, like, why do I care about this? Or why should I care about this? Or why don't I care about this? Why do other people care about this? And I have this desire to understand it so that I can get a better grasp on it, or so that I don't just like start off with position instead of starting off with information that leads me to a position, right? I shouldn't start off with a position and then get information to lead me there, or that leads to the position. I should start off with information and let that lead me to a position, right? And I feel like there's just like such an unbelievable lack of that in I say this in modern society. I don't know how shit was before I became, a sentient being, right? Like I was born in 95. I don't know if people were smarter back then or if they had a better mind for things or if they just didn't care or if things are exactly the same, right? But I feel like whatever the case was back then, if it isn't a novel thing to our time, then it's at least highly exacerbated by the internet and by the media around us. And it's just crazy to me. I don't understand it. And it leads you to being an Alec Gunter, someone who is, immortalized forever on a Jubilee video calling black people Uncle Toms because they don't agree with him on black issues, In the second half, Alec jumps to comparing the retirement age to the age of consent. Okay, I want you to find me that timestamp and then, or find where that happens and give me a timestamp 3 minutes before it so we can get the context leading into it, and we'll watch it for 10 minutes, all right? We'll finish out this half of it, which will give you enough time to find that. And then we'll move on to more immigration research.
I do want to say that I do agree with.
Oh, cool. Wait, did stream dip? Okay, never mind.
Jeb, that we do need some sort of optimization of our social welfare programs. I mean, I personally think that making some sort of like welfare agency or something to control all of them would probably be a good idea, instead of us just it's like we have the EBT and all that shit that's just controlled by each individual state. We should have some sort of federalized welfare agency that controls all of them and any future programs.
What would that look like? Jeb, what would that look like? Would it be
I
right
want
to
to make sure
work?
that kids and
So,
elderly have
hold
one.
on. So what it would look like probably differs based on whoever
Wait a
would
second.
implement it.
Why did I just now realize that Alec Gunter is bald? Has he always been bald? Am I sorry? I'm an asshole. I'm a piece of shit. I should stop focusing on people's appearance so much. Holy shit! I swear to God, I've become a more judgmental person in the past year. I need to stop making fun of people's appearance. I'm just surprised. I pointed out because I'm surprised, because I feel like he had a lot of hair the last time I saw him, but maybe he was wearing like a hat or a beanie or something. I don't know.
And if I were dictator tomorrow, what I would do is the United States of America would have about 10 or 11 welfare programs as opposed to 140 plus federally funded welfare programs.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
You can continue if you want. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're the king of America, the God King of America,
yeah,
why not just give people the money? What's with the welfare program? Just extradite the rich and give it to the poor.
Well, I mean, a welfare program, the reason, and I think this is part of the issue with some of the things you're saying, is you need a sustainable system so that once God King Jeb goes, these things can continue in a sustainable way. That's why.
What do
You
you
need programs to provide framework, limitations, qualifications. Because if I just give people money,
That would
once
still
I
be a
leave,
program, though.
no, but
You
hold
people are
on. I get what he's saying. Why don't if I'm God King, right? I have personal control over treasury funds. Why don't I just
give
fucking
them the
Venmo
funds that
everybody?
they need to survive? Just give them that.
Because I need to set up a program so that when I leave, there is a lasting institution that can continue providing the benefit I want to provide.
Is there anybody in your system that
God, Jeb is so based. Even if I disagree with him on stuff, I love
Probably,
Jeb.
yeah.
We're supposed to
Yeah,
talk
I've
to him
never-
later today.
You're God
Because
King.
because I am humble and I would admit that there's not a
Because
system on the planet I've
resources
seen.
are unlimited.
So you're
Yeah.
fine with your people suffering.
I'm fine with doing as
These
much as I
resources are
possibly
unlimited.
can. with the
Okay, let me
resources
ask you
that I
this:
have.
what if you could take from one person and give it to another?
Sure.
Would you do that in any circumstance?
That would be hurting. That would be hurting.
Yeah, no.
No,
It depends.
no. You're taking. Okay, so there's a
It
guy
depends
with
on
like a golden pool, all right, and he's got like $1 million in the
God
bank.
damn,
You take
Lord.
200,000.
Can I-
I have
okay.
like $200,000 because I need to
Listen.
feed 15 people over here.
I love-
200,000. Hold on,
listen.
just let me finish. Just
This man is a case.
$200,000. 15. You'll have 15 people.
Dude,
Would you
there's
do that?
very.
No, I'm
hey,
asking you a question. Would you do
I-
that? Yes or no?
cool. And I am
$200,000.
deciding,
people.
Alec.
Yeah,
I
if
have
you could
two.
save everybody, would you?
I have two questions posed to
I
me
just
right now.
want an answer. Would you do
Alec,
that or not?
Alec, I have
Just
two
answer yes or
questions.
no, and then you
I
can
have
ask a
one.
question.
Stop.
Just answer
I
my
have-
question first. That's all I'm asking. That's fair.
No. No.
It's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
ND. I just said no. I wouldn't. Okay.
Then why
ND.
should I answer your questions?
I'm not trying to get you to. I'm trying to get you to shut up.
Okay,
I
just
want to
you
answer
did
ND
not answer that. So
questions.
I don't have any reason to assume that you would do that.
That's a good
Don't
replay.
ever. You would let people starve at the expense of others for their golden
Sure.
pool.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's on record. That's shitty of you.
Yes.
Fuck
Cool.
you. All right.
So
next.
ND, if I was God King tomorrow, to make this, I want other people to be able to talk. I would limit United States to have 10 or 11 welfare programs. It would probably be limited to SNAP, unemployment insurance, disability, WIC, and the following programs. There are programs that you can look up that are net positive benefit to those who put into them. And I would create a new program that would be financial wisdom and credit recovery, where it would be just solely, you would use mail, you would use text, you would use email to ensure that the government is putting out quality information on how to survive in a privatized world that we tend to promote in the United States. And it would be working on helping people recover their credit.
I disagree with this.
You could go into an office and you could work with a free government-sponsored financial advisor who could help you recover your credit, who could help you allocate reasonable funds to a 401k in order to financially plan for your future. And the money that would be saved on administrative costs would make SNAP so powerful that you don't need all these little tiny niche programs. It would make unemployment insurance so powerful that you don't need all these tiny niche programs, because generally if somebody is sick or they're out of work or they have too many kids, they would get what they need from the bolstered few programs that we have.
Okay, and
Universal
just
basic
to,
financial advisors.
and just to like take Alex's question and make it more reasonable, would
Sure.
you be in favor of
I feel
doing
like it's
a
pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, wait here. I'm gonna try to help you.
Okay.
Okay. So when it comes to 65 retirement age, like
Yeah.
the age of 65, if we made sure that everyone, seeing as 50% of the country doesn't pay any taxes, if everyone was paying taxes, would you be okay with a 65 minimum age retirement?
Well, it just depends, because in my thing, there's no Social Security, so that wouldn't be necessarily relevant. Well, so
Well, I'm
in
just
your
saying- no, I'm
definition,
saying-
what's
How
the
do
65
people over
retirement?
65 not work then?
I'm just saying today, like not if you're God King, would you be in favor of supporting the age of 65 retirement if we made sure that everyone was paying a tax for that privilege?
So like through Social Security as it exists right now?
Yes.
No.
Seeing as 50% of the country does not pay pay that, if
Yeah.
we made it where 100% was paying for Social Security and everyone and at the age of
Yeah.
65, what would you be in favor of that in some fashion?
No, because I'll let you know the implication that's coming in my head is that implies that the tax, because everybody does pay Social Security taxes. That's the Social Security and Medicare taxes are the only taxes that poor people are not exempt from and they can't refund. So they already are. So the reality.
Okay, we're gonna skip the rest of this because I want to get to the really stupid thing here. Is that true that 50% of you guys don't pay tax? I believe Social Security, now I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's tied to income tax. I feel like I used to know this, but I don't remember. Here, well, let's see. Where do Social Security a dedicated payroll tax? Employers and employees each pay 6.2% of wages to the taxable minimum. Yeah, so if it's payroll tax, I believe that if you don't make a certain amount of money, or if you meet a bunch of qualifications that are pretty easy to meet, that you don't actually end up paying that tax. Like, there's a good number of people in the United States that literally just do not pay taxes because they qualify for so many deductions that at the end of the day, they actually get money back from the government rather than get money or give money to the government. And that's a huge proportion of the United States, yes. So, okay, let's see. Okay, this is 4 minutes ahead, and it will give you better context. Cool. Let's see if this crashes stream.
That's not an interesting
Nope.
question because it's not just black and white like that. It should actually be the companies that we're talking about need to put
It's
forth some
opinion,
sort of
man.
pension plan and actually have. Yeah, we're arguing opinions.
Yeah, no, it's your opinion.
Dude,
No, that's your
here's the
opinion that it's
thing.
not interesting. I think it
Here-
is.
Alex,
Do you think
here's the
people should
thing.
work
The
over
entire
65?
point-
I'd like to know. Because I
You know
think
what's
that's
utterly
insane.
uninteresting is hearing
I
you
think
say
that's
the
insane. I
same
think that's
fucking
I think that's
thing
cruel.
85 times when people are answering
Alex,
it.
Once you hit 65, you
is
should be
here-
just
Completely
cruising
uninteresting.
to death. Okay?
Okay,
That's
but
it.
here's the thing.
Cruising
Enjoy
for
life.
death.
The entire point here that literally even hippie Jesus was making it is that it shouldn't be on the retirement plan shouldn't be on the government. It should be on the corporations, and people should learn how to save money through 401ks and
and
stuff.
guess what?
Which
It's on
even
the
as
government.
a socialist, I agree with.
Listen, it's on the government to ensure that the corporations do that. So it is on the government.
Yes.
Wait, but he asked
All the
me a
time.
question. Would you be
But
okay with legislative compromise where corporations are forced to give a pension for their employees? And I said, sure. If that's legislative compromise that passes, I would be fine with it. I'd support it.
Yeah, we're okay with forcing the companies to do pension plans for like especially larger companies to do pension plans
Yes,
because
so
they
that people over
should be.
65 don't
That
have
is
to
the
work.
and
I'm
that-
saying.
because
I'm saying.
but it's because
Very
they
simple.
should be.
Okay, you know what? I changed my mind. Earlier I said I don't know if it's an intelligence thing. This is an intelligence thing. I actually think Alec Gunter is fucking retarded. How the fuck does he not understand? Like, I've been listening to this as long as he's been in the call, right? In real time. How the fuck does he not understand this when there's fucking 12 people over the course of this call trying to fucking explain it to him? He must be retarded. And it's not like everyone's like being mean to him. Some people are on his side. And he's still being a fucking retard. Holy shit.
Alex,
They should already be, and they don't anymore because unions don't have any power. So the way that we would have to do that is through legislative compromise. And yes, if we did that properly and also teach people how to properly use 401ks, we could completely forego Social Security because it
Can
would
I-
be redundant.
Can I get a word in?
Oh my
Really? Are you serious? This is what I mean when I call you a white privileged punk, all right? Because you
Let Alec talk,
yell
you
and
motherfucker.
scream.
So
Fuck
white,
you.
man.
You yell and
Listen,
scream.
Alex
all
just
you
wants to
fucking
know
night,
if
and then bitch
people
when
over
somebody shuts
65
you
still have
down.
to work, okay?
Fucking
move
cry,
rooms.
womp womp.
Oh, this is so
All
wrong,
I'm saying
dude.
is ideologically.
What? No, you
Okay, this is
no,
one
you
of
went
my
to,
okay. This is one of my
AFK.
fundamental beliefs. If you're 65 or older, you should not be forced to work. That is one of my ideological
Nobody's
beliefs.
forced to
Well,
work.
no,
All
but
it-
here's the
stop.
issue is when you
Can I
say
finish?
forced, like
I let you
you're
finish.
Nobody's forced.
you didn't let anyone either finish. That's not true.
They don't want to hear it, Alec.
I'll let you finish, and then I'll finish. I'll let
Nobody
you
here
finish, and then I'll
believes that
finish.
anyone should be forced to work. The issue is you use force in a very different context than it actually
I said you
exists.
need you to live. That's force.
Yeah, but under Social Security right now, Social Security
jail, dude.
recipients need to work to live because it's not a good
They shouldn't
program.
have to.
Yes.
Okay, then improve it.
Sure.
Improve
Oh
it.
my
That's
God,
just
he
what I would
can't
do
understand. He
by
doesn't
erasing it
understand.
and
And
changing it.
they should. All I asked you was, should people have to work over 65? And you said, I don't know.
No,
That was
you
your
said
answer.
do people
You didn't
in
answer
your
it.
system
You didn't
work?
answer it.
I
I'm
did
not
answer
crazy,
it.
man. You did
You-
not.
when you
No,
said-
you did not.
Alec, when you said
Okay, then answer it again. Should people over 65 have to work? Yes or no? Answer it
no,
again.
they shouldn't.
Okay, no, they shouldn't. Okay, so great. So if you're God Emperor, you would make it so that people over 65 automatically get enough money to sustain
No.
themselves. Yes?
No.
No.
Oh
you
my
wouldn't,
fucking
because
God.
You believe
Two different
that people over
questions.
65 shouldn't have to work,
This
right?
is why I
No.
said your question is uninteresting because he's trying to give you the nuance behind it of giving
Yes.
people enough benefits
There's
to
no
not need Social
nuance.
Security.
Do they work or not? Is there nuance behind the age of consent?
You're such a fucking partisan loser. Like,
The
I hope
nuance-
you know
no,
that.
no, no, is
You're
there
not
nuance?
Zosh. You're
I'm
not
asking you.
Destiny.
I'm
Nothing
asking
you're
you.
saying is
Is
actually
nuance-
changing anything.
is-
You are
is
literally
there-
just a privileged fucking dude
Who is this
sitting in a
guy?
computer chair yelling at people on the internet to try and make a living and to try and be one of the big political streamers on Twitch or on YouTube, depending on what platform you're on. But guess what? Nobody fucking cares what you have to say. You were a giant fucking joke on Jubilee. And guess what? You're just going to continue being a
God
fucking
damn, Alpha.
partisan privileged
Jesus
loser. Fucking
Christ.
womp womp. Listen to what he
Womp
has to say and stop being a fucking punk.
Is there nuance to the age of consent?
Do your fucking job. This isn't gonna work out for you.
Let's go
Ooh,
to
that's bad. That's bad. You can't answer that?
All right,
Is
moderator
there
talk.
nuance to the age of consent?
moderator. We'll go to jail.
Why do you
Jail's-
keep
Okay, yeah, you know what? I don't need to hear any more of that. That was fucking based. That was, oh man, holy fuck. I don't think I've heard someone get put in their place so unbelievably brutal in this space in so long. That was fucking awesome, dude. Holy shit. Vigilante, please tell Hippie Jesus he has a new fucking fan. Holy fuck, dude. Yeah, I felt that from the other side of the planet, dude. Dude, that shit's so fucking brutal. I can't imagine. I would probably stop streaming. Listen, I have enough pride, okay, to know and like self-awareness to know that like it's time for me to stop doing something. It's time for me to, you know, whatever the case is, right? I stopped trying to like make the full-time streaming thing work because it just wasn't going to work with my lifestyle, with my like aspirations in life. Like it wasn't going to work. And so I stopped trying to make the full-time streaming thing work. Now I do it because I get to play video games, and this is when I get to play video games. And I like to know things about the world. Those are my true intentions, and those are my true like I like it when more people are in chat. I like it when there are more people that watch YouTube videos and shit like this. But fuck, dude. I would fucking stop streaming. That is too much. That is too much. That is too much of a blow to one's not just like self-esteem. It's like a blow to their character. Like, holy shit. Okay, let's move on. Oh shit, wait, hold on. We got some live content to go over.
Okay, so we're just gonna do just in a second, we're gonna do about like a 10 or 15 second.
Oh my god, it started. It's just starting.
So I don't know, it's not starting.
Glenn Greenwald's about to get blown the fuck out.
We're ready to begin on our end. Sure.
Let's go. Are we? That actually scared the fuck out of me. God, I can't wait till I stop sounding like I've been smoking for 20 years.
So let's go. Are you guys, you're totally ready? Because we're just going to play our 10-second vignette and be ready to go. There you go. Sure. Okay. Obrigado.
Bro, why does he have like a whole ass fucking team? How many fucking Glenn Greenwald? He only has 191 subscribers.
5 seconds and we're ready. All right.
Why is it freezing? Is that my internet?
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Today I'm hosting a debate between author and journalist Glenn.
How the fuck does this guy afford?
Commentator Destiny. We're going to be debating about whether
Well, not afford, but why does he need that many people in like a whole ass fucking like full studio
some ground for the rest
with
of
only
the debate.
191,000 subscribers on YouTube?
And within your answer, can you define what an insurrection is? Glenn, can you start and then we'll go to Destiny?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we started there because I do feel like we spent in that last debate a lot of time on the question of whether this was a coup or whether this was an insurrection. And I feel like these are more political terms of art than terms of science that have a concrete definition, which is one of the reasons why I think it's not only justifiable but actually necessary to look at how these terms have been applied historically and in other contexts, not as a way of distracting from January 6th, but precisely to see whether or not the attempt to apply those terms to January 6th is consistent with how these terms are generally used, or whether it's just kind of a partisan attempt to create a narrative that serves the Democratic Party. So for me, I guess you kind of have to look at coup and insurrection a little bit differently. A coup is when some faction in society, either the faction that is already in power or the faction that is not in power but wants to be in power, mount some very credible and serious attempt, almost always using force or the threat of force, people who are a militia or the actual military, in order to seize power illegitimately outside of the legal structure, using violence or the threat of violence in order to do so. An insurrection just simply, I think, implies that there's a faction domestically that has launched a serious rebellion, a serious attempt to seize power in that country, again, using extrajudicial, extra legal means that in almost all cases involves either the use of force or the threat of force, you may be able to.
This describes January 6th. He would just, the only reason that he would squirm out of that definition would be a serious attempt. That's how he would squirm out of it.
Imagine a situation where the use of force or the threat of force is not necessary for an insurrection, but I think it's extremely difficult to imagine such a case. But in general, that's how the terms are used. And then you have these kind of subsidiary terms that are very new, that are kind of retreats from those terms, like legislative coup or soft coup, that, as I said, is a way to kind of put it into the general category of coup and insurrection without actually calling it one. And that typically involves the illegitimate use of a legal process or some other means that's still extrajudicial, contrary to the law, without actually using force or the threat of force to achieve those ends.
What about faking votes?
What about what?
What about faking votes? Would that be counted?
I'm sorry.
If you tried to fake votes, would that be counted as an insurrection, or you just force, really?
To fake votes?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to try and steal an election using fraud, I don't really think that's the sort of thing that we have in the past described as either an insurrection or a coup. That's just more stealing an election. And that's why I think it's so important to distinguish between actually when force is actually involved or invoked or the threat of violence is invoked, precisely because there are so many other ways to seize power illegitimately that fall short of being a coup or insurrection. That's actually a good example of one, which would be fabricating votes or throwing away valid votes or fabricating invalid votes as a means of winning an election illegitimately.
Destiny, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm happy to almost run with Glenn's definition here, because I think January 6th pretty squarely and easily falls within that. But I guess the two definitions I would offer up are the Colorado Supreme Court. They concluded that an insurrection, as used in Section 3, is 1, a public use of force or a threat of force, 2, by a group of people, and 3, in order to hinder or prevent the execution of the Constitution of the United States. In Paulson and Baud's paper, they go over broader definitions, but they more or less say the same thing in more words. I mean, we can read from them, and they would say that insurrection is best understood as concerted, forcible resistance to the authority of government to execute the laws in at least some significant respect. So I would say that like an insurrection is probably more than being upset at a police officer and saying like, no, I'm not going to, get a ticket and running away. Probably has to involve a group of people who are making a concerted effort to like resist the good faith execution of law from the federal government in this case. And I think January 6th with Trump's plan to circumvent the electoral process with false electors, the actual day of events where Trump gives a huge speech. He sends a whole bunch of people down to the Capitol, ostensibly to protest the certification of the vote, where the people at the Capitol engage in violence in order to prevent Congress from certifying the vote. And then when the people at the Capitol engaged in violence succeeded in preventing the certification of the vote for some number of hours and then were finally cleared away, I would say that whatever we call an insurrection or whatever definition we use, all of the events here are bullseye like an insurrection.
So can I ask a question to you? I don't want to usurp your role. I don't know how you want to conduct it.
Usurp your role. He doesn't want to do a coup on this podcast.
Is there any requirement that it actually poses a credible or a serious threat to
exactly. See, I said
so for
it's
example,
a serious
let's
threat.
Imagine that Donald Trump wins the election in November, as most polls predict that he will, at least as of now. And let's say
Why
that
would you
have
go
one or
off of
two
polls
people
right now?
inside the U.S. government who are kind of career civil servants who view Trump as such a great threat to all things decent in the United States, and they go to the Capitol and they're armed with knives and they stand outside and they say, we have knives and we demand that Donald Trump be removed from the White House and the Congress vote to impeach him immediately and reinstall Joe Biden because we think he's the legitimate president. Would that, in the history books, is something that you would then call a coup or an attempted coup or an insurrection?
I mean, you might call it one, but I think it would be so minor and it would be so silly that I don't know if we would necessarily refer to it as such. For instance, like we could concoct a conspiracy to murder thing where I make a plan that's so ridiculous with another person that we're going to go and buy, I guess snow, and we're going to pour it down somebody's roof until it all melts and the person drowns and dies. I'm like, and we actually go and buy the stuff and we go to the house and take steps towards the crime, but it's such a silly crime. I don't know if you'd call it that. I'm sure we could find cases like really far away on the peripheral, on the edge, but with January 6th, I think we're in a bullseye definition of whatever we would call insurrection or attempted coup or rebellion.
So I think the reason why I asked that is, I mean, I think actually the extent of the threat, like the credibility or the gravity of the threat, is absolutely critical to whether or not in any other instance we would be calling something like this a coup or an attempted coup. Because if you look at January 6th, although you did have more than 2 people doing the sort of thing that I just described, and I asked a ridiculous example to try and understand whether you would at least concede that it requires some kind of significant or quantitatively impressive attempt to actually seize control from the legal means of power. What you had on January 6th is a hodgepodge of people, which, according to the federal government itself, had only a minority, a small minority of people who actually used violence of any kind. There's only something like 10% or 8%, depending on how you counted the number of people charged who are even accused of having used violence at all. And it's a pretty broad definition for using violence, like anyone who got near any attempt to hit a police officer or to push a police officer aside got put in that violent category. So I'm at a very small number of people. And then on top of that, not a single person during this entire 3-hour riot actually pulled out an arm, let alone discharged an arm. The only arm that was discharged was one that was used against the people who were protesting. And then it basically got subdued in 3 hours, not with any kind of real force, pretty easily. I mean, it was pretty easily subdued in a very short period of time. And I don't think anybody would argue, and I'm interested in whether you would, that this ever got near a serious threat to remove or topple the most powerful and militarized government ever to exist on the planet? I mean, do you think it even got close to a serious threat?
I fucking hate this stupid fucking loser fucking argument that, like, because what they were doing at the end of the day probably would have been overturned or whatever the fuck, you know? It doesn't matter. That they could, like, oh yeah, well, sure, they tried to do this thing, but, like, was it really that bad? Was it really that bad? Because, like, even if they did, you know, succeed in what they were trying to do that day and they grabbed the butt, like, we would have sent special forces and we would have killed, like, whoever was holding on to any lawmakers, and we would have just, like, gone back to business as usual afterwards. Like, that doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. What the intent and what the force behind it was, I think, are the two most important things. Maybe they'll touch on that.
Threat to do that?
But yeah, I think that's the threat of force, or the level of force that they're capable of, and their intent. I think that those are probably the two, off the top of my head. Those are probably the two most important aspects.
So just as a quick thing, going through all of these points, there's a whole bunch of things that's used to talk about January 6th that I feel like doesn't want to engage with the facts of what happened, and most of these points are just not relevant. So hodgepodge of people. It was a collection of Donald Trump supporters that had been called there weeks or months in advance by Donald Trump. All of these people showed up to his ellipse speech. A lot of them did. All of them marched to the Capitol, all chanting the same things with the clear goal of protesting the certification of the vote. That's why they were saying things like 1776, which we all recognize was a rebellion against Great Britain. It wasn't a hodgepodge of people. It was a collection of people that were all there for an incredibly specific purpose. I think it would be unbelievable for me to ever accept the idea that it just randomly happened that those people happened to be gathered, that were all supporting the same candidate, that was saying that Congress shouldn't certify the vote, that was trying to get Pence not to certify the vote, that these people happened to go down to the Capitol, they happened to engage in violence, they happened to succeed in delaying the certification of the vote. All of this happened randomly from a hodgepodge of people that were subdued in 3 hours, whether they were subdued, whether they discharged an arm. And to say that they weren't a serious threat is also crazy, given that there were times where these people were literally rooms away from other lawmakers. I think it's more incredible to say that it never was a serious threat. Like, you yourself say that only a small percentage engaged in violence. What if that percentage instead of 10% was 15%? What if instead of 15 it was 20 or 25%? Who's to say what could have possibly happened afterwards? other than the fact that thankfully, retrospectively, we can look and see that it didn't get to that. But I mean, this was some tens of thousands of people that were many engaged in violent protests that were breaking into the Capitol and managed to delay the certification.
How many people are you saying were at the Capitol on January 6th?
I don't know. I've seen everything from 100,000 plus to some people say it was 50 to 70,000. I don't know what the exact number is.
Who entered the Capitol?
No, not who entered. Who were there protesting outside.
Oh, how many entered? How many entered?
Was it the numbers I saw were anywhere from 1 to 2,000?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So imagine if 5,000 would have entered or 10,000, right? Who's to say that there couldn't have been a threat?
So just on pushing on Destiny's point, Glenn, at what point would you call that an insurrection, or at what point would you say?
Good
you said
question.
6-7% were violent? Is there a certain percentage that it needs to hit, or?
Well, I mean, Destiny himself acknowledged in the very first question I asked him that there's a quantitative component to this for sure, which is why nobody would seriously call two people with knives gathering outside the Capitol, even though they're proclaiming an insurrectionary intention or objective. Nobody would say in history that that would be referred to as the United States having survived a coup.
What is the capability of force? What amount of force are they capable of
I don't think that there
doing?
is like, as I said, I don't think it's a term of science, these terms like insurrection and coup. I think they're like a lot of the terms that we use in our political vernacular, like terrorism and hate speech or disinformation. They're really
Like, again, the reason I say like the highest like level of force that could be applied, right? Let's say that there were, 300 people that went there, but they were completely unarmed versus, 100 people that went there, but they all had fucking guns, which would be a more serious attempt, right? It would probably be the guys that had guns because they have more capability to enact some sort of violence or enact some deadly level or some significant level of force that would actually be threatening, right?
really has no fixed meaning. It all kind of depends on who gets to apply the term and for what purpose. Is a group using violence a revolutionary group fighting against corruption? Are they trying to topple the government and therefore are terrorists? All these terms are very kind of shifting because they're points of propaganda. But what I think is that in order to make a serious case that this is a historic event, I mean, I think one of the Krasnstein brothers began by comparing it to Pearl Harbor or 9/11 and the Civil War, kind of invoking those kinds of events. Democrats have done that as well. I don't hold destiny to that, but clearly there's a belief, I think, that this is like a major event in United States history. And for me, the reason it wasn't is because it never did get anywhere near
lunatic
the number that
cuck.
would be required to pose a significant
A
threat
partisan
to the power
hack.
of the United States government. I don't think you can set a quantitative number. You can ask whether, and I think the kind of people who were there is so important. And that, I mean, Destiny dismissed the idea that it was a hotspot,
a bunch of
trying to say they were all
retards.
homogenized. Even the U.S. government admits they were wildly disparate people, both in terms of why they were there and what they intended. That's why a few of them got charged with sedition, and then others got charged with misdemeanors, and then some people got charged with felonies, even though they weren't accused of violence, because they had extraordinarily different intentions. This was not, for example, like, I think you can look at a event that kind of comes closer to what would be required to call it a coup, which was the rebellion by the Wagner Group in Russia, where you're talking about an extremely well-trained militia, a well-armed militia of 25,000 soldiers that had the capability to shoot Russian military aircraft from the sky, and they did. They took down 6 helicopters and a military jet. But even there, the Russian state, nowhere near as powerful as the U.S. state, distracted by the war in Afghanistan, crushed it in 12 hours. Like in the context of Russian history, that is not even like a footnote in terms of like a real threat to the power of the Russian state. And yet, that at least had real numbers, 25,000 who were real soldiers. Most of the people who were at this Trump rally, remember the 4 who died on January 6th, 2 of them died of a heart attack. 1 died of a speed overdose. These are people who are not even fit, let alone well-trained soldiers, at least the majority of them. And so when you're talking about people who really did anything like that, you're talking about a very small number.
Yeah, so there's, again, I find this I feel like it's going to be a theme here. The obfuscation and then the misdirection and everything, I just don't think any of this is relevant. Nobody thought that the Whiskey Rebellion or the Whiskey Insurrection was going to destroy the entire U.S. government, right? There's a few hundred farmers that were upset over, taxes and alcohol. But like, why do we think that the insurrection, the rebellion needs a significant chance to succeed in order to be called an insurrection or or rebellion. That's just historically, you keep saying historically, that's never been the case. It's never been the case that we've had to establish that it would have never been the case, for instance, if only one state seceded and they had no realistic chance of winning in the Civil War, that we would say, oh, well, they weren't insurrectionists or rebellionists because they were never going to win. So on that ground of like, they have to have a realistic shot at winning, I just don't think that's just not grounds ever for an insurrection or to declare insurrection or rebellion. It's just a way to minimize the events that actually happened because they happened to not be successful. When we talk about how...
if it's a joke, then if it's a joke, it should be treated as such.
But it was a joke.
But it
wasn't a joke.
Threatened the United States government.
It did threaten the U.S. government. It was a historic event. What other time in U.S. history has the certification of the vote been delayed?
The certification, we've had so many official proceedings of Congress, including things like confirming Supreme Court justices.
He's not answering the question.
Because people went to Capitol Hill, entered Capitol Hill, occupied Capitol Hill.
He's talking about something
protested
else.
The proceedings and ended up delaying the proceedings. There have been proceedings to vote on wars, where anti-war protesters have disrupted. So all the time we've had.
Was that trying to change the outcome of an election?
Protesting congressional proceedings, and never are the ones who don't use violence accused of felonies, let alone anything resembling the kinds of charges that the January 6th defendants faced, because the ideology, the ideological component here is what made this to be something so much bigger than in fact what it was.
I'm going to ask the same question again. When in the history of the United States has the certification of the electoral vote, the peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next, been delayed by protesters or violent protesters?
I'm happy to concede that this is the first time that people went on January 6th.
Then it's historical. Then it's historical.
And interrupted the proceedings.
Yeah, then it's historical, right? By definition, it's a moment in history that is unique.
It wasn't a serious disruption.
They delayed the vote, didn't they?
They delayed the vote and they attacked our fucking Capitol building.
The first time in U.S. history. Yes, that's significant. That's serious.
Why is it more significant to delay this proceeding than other congressional proceedings? Things like voting on wars or confirming Supreme Court justices are pretty serious, too, in terms of the things Congress is supposed to do under Article 1. But the reason we don't consider those protests, even though they might have delayed the proceedings some,
no, we consider them protests,
historic or serious or an insurrection, is because they never posed a threat to the stability of the United States government. In order to have an actual insurrection of the kind that you want to claim this is, you would need enormous numbers of very well-trained people who are heavily armed with serious plans to go into the Capitol and overthrow the power of the United States government. This is the kind of drama queen behavior that has dominated the Trump years, where every kind of event is catastrophized to its highest extent.
Yeah, it's drama queen behavior on everyone seeing the drama queens go in and beat the shit out of cops and fucking say they were going to hang and fucking kill different fucking lawmakers. Yeah, we're the drama queens for pointing out the things that they were being drama queens over. Drama queens to the point where they were willing to put their entire lives on the fucking line to fucking subvert the fucking election. Jesus, I hate these fucking people.
I would say that any past, so like the Whiskey Rebellion in the United States, that's stupid. They shouldn't have called it that. They should have called it like the Farmer Protest or something different. Or because what you're saying right now, it stands in contrast to how every other person viewed insurrectionism or insurrectionists at the time when, say, the 14th Amendment was drafted and ratified. People viewed people sometimes as being insurrectionary or giving aid or comfort to enemies of the United States just for letting their children go off to war to serve the Confederacy. It's nice if you, Glenn Greenwald, personally have some view of what you personally think an insurrectionist or rebellion might look like or what it should be. But to be quite frank, your opinion doesn't really matter. The opinion would be the historical relevance of the saying in the United States. It would be the historical analysis that exists for historical rebellions or insurrections in the United States, which oftentimes had very little to no chance of succeeding. Even the insurrectionists themselves thought that they were going to succeed. And we would use that analysis that exists at the time when, say, the 14th Amendment was ratified, and then we would use that going forward to figure out what do we think an insurrection and a rebellion is. And again, you can try to minimize, you can try to call it ideological and whatever you want. None of those congressional protests that you mentioned in the past rose to a level where tens of thousands of protesters were violently breaking into Congress and delaying the certification of the presidential vote.
You just got done saying that the maximum number of people who entered the Capitol was 2,000. And now you're calling it tens of thousands of people because you know so well. In fact, you conceded in the very first question I asked you that of course there has to be a quantitative component in terms of the gravity of the threat in order to seriously call it an insurrection or a coup, which is why I began by asking you whether or not if two people armed with knives went to the Congress and demanded that Donald Trump be removed after he was declared the winner and threatened to use violence with their knives, whether that would in the history books or by our major newspapers be referred to as the United States fighting off a coup or an insurrection. And you said, yeah, I mean, I guess if it's just two people, then it would probably be pretty ridiculous to call it that. So I see this, what happened on January 6th, a 3-hour riot that even the FBI's informants on the ground told the FBI in real time was never intended to be any kind of premeditated violent act on the part of most people, but instead was something that happened spontaneously, as so often happens where political protests confront the police and become violent. I see it much more akin to the kind of ridiculous example that I began by asking you, where you conceded that wouldn't be called an insurrection, than I do some kind of civil war type situation or even a meaningful armed rebellion of the kind that happened in Russia last year, where even that was crushed in 12 hours.
Are you familiar with Loki's Wager?
Explain it to me.
So I think Loki makes a wager with two dwarves or whatever, and eventually they say that they can cut his head off. It comes to the point to where he loses the wager. They go to collect their bet, and when they're trying to figure out how to cut his head off, they're arguing over what part of the neck is when the head starts, and then the rest of the neck begins, basically. And the argument he eventually makes is, well, you can't take even a centimeter, an inch of my neck, therefore you're not allowed to cut my head off. You're trying to argue right now that because I might not consider 2 people an insurrection, that I can't possibly consider 2,000 people an insurrection? That's the same as you saying, since I can't tell precisely where your head ends and your neck begins, I might say that your toe is part of your head. This argument is nonsense, and the only way that you can make the argument is to continue to try to make comparisons to other more extreme coups or more intense insurrectionist attempts, which I agree. There can be more extreme insurrectionist attempps. There can be more extreme coups. But the reality is, even if you want to wind it all the way back down, even if you wind it all the way back down, say, okay, we'll ignore the tens of thousands of protesters outside. We can just go with 2,000 people. Glenn, how are you seriously going to argue that 2,000 people inside the Capitol with the goal of delaying the certification of the vote, which they accomplished, doesn't represent an insurrection?
Answer the question.
Answer the question, Glenn.
The question was, he said, an insurrection when there's an actual threat to democracy. I'm pushing off. That vote isn't a threat to democracy. At what point did you call it an insurrection? Would you call it an insurrection on January 6th?
I don't know, like, here's the thing. I don't know the thin line that they'd have to cross to call it an insurrection, but whatever line that is, it was crossed a long time ago. You had the President of the United States calling
back up to
over
real time.
100,000 people to D.C., and then he riled them up, saying that they needed to essentially delay the vote. He was relying on Pence to do it. All of those protesters went to the White House. A lot of them, or not to the White House, sorry, to the Capitol building. A lot of them broke into the Capitol building with the goal of delaying the certification of the vote because they didn't like the outcome of the election and they wanted to change it. They needed to fight like hell to take their country back because Mike Pence wasn't going to do the right thing by helping Trump do his constitutional coup. And so they turned it into an insurrection. It's plenty what happened. Now, if only 20 people went in, would I consider it an insurrection? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. If only, 100 people.
I just realized something fucking crazy. I'm not getting anything from chat. There might have been lots of people talking in YouTube chat this entire time. It just has not shown me at all. Wait, can I like F5 this? Chat is disabled for this live stream? Oh shit, there were people that said shit in chat. Fuck me. I'm sorry, YouTube chat. I don't know what happened. My pop-out chat didn't show anything.
People went in, maybe if 200 people went in and they got further, maybe. I'm not sure where exactly I would, slice the pie to call it, whatever we call it. But wherever we're at, we're way over that. And I just don't think the comparisons to other more extreme coups or more extreme rebellions or anything in Russia, it just doesn't make any sense. It's only done to equivocate on what's actually happened or to do a whataboutism to something that I would probably plainly agree with. Like, wouldn't you agree this is a more serious coup or more serious insurrection? Yeah, sure, there can be more serious coups and more serious insurrections. Much the same, there could be more brutal murders of one person and another. It doesn't make one murder not a murder just because you did it easier or did it cleaner.
Okay, so first of all, the reason, as I said at the start, why historical comparisons or historic comparisons to other incidents are so important is because there's a gigantic ideological and partisan motive here in exaggerating the extent to which what happened on January 6th was a serious threat. And especially when somebody is a Democratic Party partisan who goes around saying the Democratic Party is better, we want people to go and vote for Democrats, we want to make sure Donald Trump doesn't return to power. And at the same time, the narrative they're pushing coincidentally aligns perfectly with their partisan agenda, then I think it's important to start questioning whether or not there's any authenticity to the beliefs based on how other situations have previously been treated. So let me just make 2 points here about what Donald Trump did. You're actually allowed to summon people to Washington to protest. It's one of the most important rights that the Constitution guarantees. The president is completely free to call his supporters to Washington and to tell them and argue for them that some injustice has been committed and that they ought to protest in response to it. There was one time, and only one time, when Donald Trump addressed the question of whether or not violence should be used when those people went to the Capitol. And what he said was this, quote, "I know that everybody here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard." And the fact that people, because he said peacefully, then have to resort to things like, oh, well, he invoked political cliches like fight like hell. Politicians use fight like hell in almost every speech. Joe Biden, you can read this in the New York Times on December 2nd, said, quote, "I want to make sure we're going to be fighting like hell." You can find pretty much every politician saying that. So that's one thing, is that to the extent you want to say that Donald Trump was somehow involved in this quote-unquote insurrection. The only thing he did was give a constitutionally protected speech, and that is the reason why Jack Smith has not charged him with inciting or participating in an insurrection. It's not my opinion. Obviously, Jack Smith shares the opinion that he could never obtain a conviction. The second thing is, on the numbers, 2,000 people, let's use the maximum number, went into the Capitol. A small...
I don't understand why people can't... Well, actually, I do understand. It's because they're partisan hacks. It's because they're partisan hacks. But people who are arguing this, that use that point, only use that point because they're unwilling, it for the sake of discussion, to understand the difference between legalese, legal standards, and common parlance. In common parlance, everyone should recognize what was happening that day. It was a fucking insurrection. It was a fucking coup. Whatever you want to fucking call it. Okay? Like, by Glenn's definition, it was a fucking insurrection. Okay? It might not fit the fucking legal definition. That's true. And that's fine. Whatever. We don't have to charge every single person with insurrection and then fucking put them all to the death penalty. But it was. In the brain dead partisan hackery that goes into trying to pretend like January 6th wasn't a big deal, when literally every single fucking person in America that day was sitting back like, bro, I don't know about this. It's pretty fucking crazy, man. I think that this, I think we might have gone too far with this one, man. Even conservatives, even fucking die-hard Trump fans were sitting there like, hey guys, this is a little bit too far. I think that we might have taken things. I understand, like, the election, I feel like it might have been stolen, but like at the same time, like, we'll just get them next time, guys. People like CTV, people like Rob Noor, everybody was saying January 6th was very, very, like, what's happening today is really, really fucking bad. There is no defense of it. We need to reduce tensions. We need to cool everything off, and we need to come together and condemn this. And it only took 2 weeks for the partisan hackery to come in to fucking like sanitize the event. God, it's so fucking disgusting to me.
Percentage, a tiny percentage of people who went into the Capitol actually used violence. So most of those people, the vast majority, according to the U.S. government themselves, were doing nothing other than peacefully protesting. Again, protesters entering the Capitol without authorization, occupying offices of members of Congress in order to pressure them to take some step or not take some step is something that happens all the time. We've seen many more than 2,000 protesters. So don't try and imply that on January 6th, 2,000 armed people or well-trained people intending to commit violence went into the Capitol. The most of that number that you could possibly squeeze out of it is something like 100 or 150. And now we're back way closer to the most ridiculous example that I began by asking you about, where even you said, oh, that probably shouldn't be called an insurrection, than we are to an actual threat to American power or to our system of government, which is necessary to claim in order to turn this into what you want to turn it into.
Okay, just before I respond to this, so then do you think then that the Whiskey Rebellion or the Whiskey Insurrection, was that not a rebellion or insurrection then in your eyes?
People rebelling
wait, I'm sorry,
against
say that again?
I think it's a rebellion. I think it's a rebellion. I don't think I would call it an insurrection. I think it's perfectly fine to call it a
Oh
rebellion.
my God, he's fucking retarded.
Exactly what happened with the Whiskey Rebellion. I haven't thought about that question before, but I think the word rebellion is vague enough that any kind of protest could be called a rebellion. I mean, people who are protesting and interrupting political events and going to the White House and banging on the fence against the war in Israel and U.S. support for it are rebelling against U.S. policy. I don't have a problem with that term.
Okay.
But I have to look more closely at the Whiskey Rebellion to be able to say
That's fine.
definitively
Okay.
that.
If you want to make these arguments that any protest can be called a coup or rebellion, you're free to make that argument. But you have to understand that you are using it in an ahistorical way, that no legal scholar, that nobody who's passed laws in Congress that refers to an insurrection or rebellion, literally nobody in the legislative or historical context in the United States has used rebellion or insurrection to mean protest. That has just never been the case. It is entirely...
At all.
What?
That's not my argument. That's not my argument at all. My argument is that what happened on January 6th was a protest.
That's fine, but I'm saying that what you just said, any two people knocking on a fence might be considered a rebellion or insurrection. That can be your assessment, or that the Whiskey Rebellion was a rebellion but not an insurrection. That might be your assessment. But at the time, it was known as the Whiskey Insurrection, which was around the time when people were drafting the 14th Amendment. So I would think that their understanding of what an insurrection was at the time is probably a more important analysis than what your personal subjective and convenient interpretation of what an insurrection might be right now.
Now you're just ranting. I mean, this claim that like everyone who was ever involved in the lawmaking process or the legislative process sees the term as you do. We can agree, just like to set the facts straight, that Jack Smith, who charged Donald Trump with many crimes, including crimes that were considered quite aggressive.
It is so hard to tell for me at this point what people are just like so brain addled with their, you know, anti-government stances that they've just completely fallen deep into that. Like they've delved too deep, and now they've hit the ball rug, and the ball rug has gone around in their mind and made them fucking retarded by destroying all the connections in their fucking brain, right? Like I can't tell if that's what's happening or if they're just bad faith. What Destiny said made total fucking sense to any person who was listening to the words that he said. Hey, back then, when they were talking about insurrection, when they drafted the 14th Amendment, when they were talking about this, when they were talking about that, they used insurrection and coup and rebellion in these ways. It seems like if we're going to be fighting over like the 14th Amendment and whether that should keep Donald Trump off of the ballot, and you know, the Colorado Supreme Court has said that they're keeping him off of the ballot because of that. Like, we should probably look at it in that way. He's like, what does that mean? That's really convenient for you to read it in the exact same way as the people who drafted it. Like,
from a prosecutorial perspective, like he was not a overly cautious prosecutor, but a quite aggressive one who stretched a lot of theories to accuse him of certain felonies. He chose not to accuse Donald Trump of a crime that is in the U.S. Code, which is participating in or inciting an insurrection. You agree that that's not part of what Jack Smith charged?
I don't think the Heritage Foundation, no. Did something isn't relevant to a particular criminal charge.
Well,
I mean, there's two reasons. Well, one is because
all members of the lawmakers
he's friends with like Alex Jones and people like that now.
Amendment, a criminal conviction isn't relevant here. We don't need a criminal conviction for.
No, I'm asking you why Jack Smith. I'm not talking about the banning from the ballot. That'll be a U.S. Supreme Court decision, and the courts have thus far split on that question. Democratic judges in Colorado, and then secretaries of state in California and Rhode Island, both have taken the opposite position. I'm not asking you about whether he should be stricken from the ballot.
A Fed, yeah, he's totally a Fed.
Why did Jack Smith, an extremely aggressive prosecutor in these cases, not charge Donald Trump with inciting or participating in an insurrection?
It could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that that's a question.
Do you have an idea?
Well, I was about to, but then you cut me off. Yeah, it could be that he feels like he doesn't have enough strength to secure a conviction for insurrection. It could be that if you actually read the statute for insurrection, even the criminal statute itself is like kind of vague because it uses insurrection, like in the statute of insurrection, it doesn't really give much guidance as to what it is. Nobody in the history of the United States has ever been charged with that particular crime. And it could just be that he felt like there was an easier prosecutorial path to go. You're not seriously you're not of the contention right now that if somebody isn't charged with a particular crime, nobody thought they did it, right? You don't think that prosecutors just think that we're going to charge you with everything we think you did, right? You understand that when people are charging crimes, they're charging what they think they can get a conviction on, yeah?
Yes, having worked in the legal profession as a lawyer for more than a decade, I do actually understand that sometimes prosecutors opt not to charge people with crimes, even though they may think they're guilty. What I'm saying is a specific case of a prosecutor who has demonstrated an eagerness to be extremely aggressive in the charging documents, including bringing crimes that many legal experts, including ones who aren't pro-Trump, believe is quite a stretch and will be very difficult to prove in court, opted not to charge Donald Trump with participating in or inciting an insurrection. I think your answer is actually correct, that he believes it would be very difficult to prove that what took place on January 6th was an insurrection and or that Trump participated in or incited it. And I think it's an extremely important point. It's not dispositive. Maybe Jack Smith had suddenly some kind of like secret motive that made him not do that, but everything we know about Jack Smith and what he was doing in these cases, I think leads us to at least acknowledge that that's pretty relevant. That
it'd be so funny if Alex Jones was a Fed dude.
Despite being very aggressive and wanting to convict Donald Trump of crimes, chose to accuse him of that crime. And I do think it's worth asking, why not? If Donald Trump actually incited an insurrection, as you believe, I would hope that the prosecutor would charge him with that crime. But I agree with Jack Smith's decision not to, because I think it would be very close to impossible to prove that that was an insurrection that he participated in or incited. So if all these legal theorists and legal scholars that you're so well acquainted with unanimously agree with your view, why wouldn't Jack Smith do that? Are you angry Jack Smith didn't charge him with that?
I would want Jack Smith to pursue, it's a federal court, so I want him to pursue whatever charges he thinks he can get Trump the most on, not just any particular thing that he thinks he might have done. There might be a number of political reasons why he decided not to go the insurrection charge route, least of all the fact that it would be the first time a criminal charge like this has ever been attempted to be used in the entire history of the United States, and also because it might actually call into question too much, what is First Amendment speech versus not, and trying to convict a former president or something like that might be a really hairy political question that the federal courts, for whatever reason, feel like they just don't want to get involved in. So they went on what they felt were more solid legal grounds that wouldn't put them, in the eyes of the American public, right during an election that would force them to have to answer essentially an incredibly difficult political question regarding protected speech, which is why I like the route that Jack Smith went, where he's going after, I think, much cleaner legal questions relating to obvious matters of obstruction that are cleaner and simpler than trying to define, what is insurrection when the statute itself doesn't even necessarily call it out. But again, to recenter, this idea that because he didn't charge for a particular crime, we can't say that J6 wasn't an insurrection, just, again, doesn't make sense when no one has ever been charged with insurrection in the United States. I think we all agree that the Civil War was at the very least an insurrection, if not a full-on rebellion. Nobody was charged after the Civil War with insurrection as a crime. It doesn't mean we don't think that they weren't insurrectionists, right?
Right, for political reasons. But in the case of Jack Smith, and I want to let this go, because my argument is not that it's dispositive. My argument is that it's rather relevant. Now, let me ask you this question. This is something I was really trying to pursue in the last debate. I don't think we ever got to have a dialogue on it, so I just want to return to it, which is the following. If Donald Trump,
he lost on that, he wants to move on.
Donald Trump had an intention to incite a coup or an insurrection in the United States, that he was hell-bent on breaking the law in order to cling to political power. There were all sorts of things that he not only could have done, but that typically people trying to perpetrate coups in almost every case do. Namely, right up until the time January 20th before noon, which is the time when the peaceful transition of power occurs, Trump was the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He was the head of the executive branch, which means under his command, he had the entire U.S. military, all sorts of agencies that are very well armed and very trained, and all of whom are duty-bound to obey his orders. Maybe some of them would have refused, but probably a lot of them would have obeyed. A lot of them were probably on his side. We heard for years how there were all these fascist and white supremacist factions within these military units. Why do you think that if Donald Trump wanted to perpetrate a coup, he didn't do what almost every other person capable of this who perpetrated the coup has done, which is order the military or these other armed agencies to surround the White House, keep anybody who tried to come and get him out, and ensure that he remains in power using violence or other illegitimate and illegal means? Like, why didn't he even try that?
You're asking me why Donald Trump didn't order the military when he already thought Milley was literally a treasonous actor for not giving him all the information he thought he was entitled to for military guns. You're asking me why he didn't ask the military to help him when he already disagreed with so many members of the military. You're asking why he didn't ask the intelligence services to help him that he had said since the start of his presidency were engaged in Russia collusion hoax, and with Peter Strzok and his text messages, and with the Hunter Biden laptop that were all set against him. You're asking me the question of why didn't Donald Trump order the very parts of his government that he thought were backstabbing the most to help him ensure his coup? Is that what, just to be clear, that's the question you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, the answer why is because he didn't have any of these people on his side and he knew it. That's why he fired people like Comey. That's why he tried to intimidate and bully every other part of his administration that wouldn't follow him, whether it was Jeff Sessions when he served as temporary attorney general, whether it was his own trying to undermine his own attorney general Barr when he turned against him, whether it was trying to undermine literally every other part of his government that turned against him. Like, Donald Trump didn't have any friends anywhere. The idea that he wouldn't turn to other members of the government to help him, like the military or the Secret Service agencies, or not the intelligence agencies, is not only is it like, well, why didn't he do it? Well, it's obvious why he wouldn't do it, because he didn't think these people had his back. I think the more difficult question for you is that if he really didn't think that there was going to be like violence at the Capitol, if he really didn't want any of that to happen, why didn't Donald Trump pick up the phone and call anybody to get the National Guard there to protect the Capitol building? When Pence, when Ivanka, when Meadows went in over and over again, when other congressmen were calling him, why is it that when the violence was at its peak, why was it just him, Eastman, and Giuliani making phone calls to other congressmen to, surprise, surprise, delay the certification of the vote?
True.
Okay, I probably answer that, but I want to go back to the question that I posed to you first and the answer that you gave to me. Oftentimes, first of all, if it's true that the leaders of the armed forces and the intelligence community and every one of these armed executive agency branches, even including ATM and all the DEA and all these other ones, all were in the posture that they did not regard themselves as duty-bound to follow Donald Trump's orders. If you're somebody, and I don't mean you're saying this had already been the case.
Hold on, can I just real quick, as Bernie said this, you just real quick, you keep saying this, duty-bound to follow Trump's orders? The oath that you take is to the Constitution of the United States, not to the President of the United States. Just to be very clear, go ahead.
You have the right, no, the President is the head of the executive branch. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
And he is below the Constitution. He is below the Constitution.
If you are in the military, you are duty-bound to obey orders. Now, you can object if you think the order is illegal. You do actually have
Oh my God, does he actually think that we swear fealty to the president?
Done that. But there's no question that there are members of the military and members in these agencies that absolutely were loyal to Trump. And oftentimes what has happened in coups and those sorts of other things is that members of the various military branches or of the armed wings of the government break up into factions and often start fighting one another. That's how you get a civil war. So even if Milley or the leader of the CIA, who at that point was Gina Haspel, who he had actually appointed, would have done what you claim, which is a pretty significant threat to democracy. They regarded themselves as antithetical or adversarial to the president, not subordinate to him.
They're subordinate to the Constitution.
That a lot of those people who have guns and run the power structure of the United States would have answered his call and been on his side. The fact that he didn't even try is so reflective of the fact that this was not an insurrectionary intent, that he walked out of the office peacefully on January 20th at noon, the way every other president previous to him had done as part of the peaceful transition of power. There were so many things that he could have done. Now, tell me, just remind me what the question is that you asked that I promised you.
Yeah. They really think of the president as the king. That you swear fealty to the king, and then you follow the rules that the king laid down, which is the Constitution. But you first and foremost listen to the king. No, you listen to the Constitution. And if the president starts doing something unconstitutional, you are duty-bound to disobey.
And before we do this, can I actually take a step back, because I just want to actually take a step back. So Glenn, you said it wasn't an insurrection because on January 6th there was no threat to actually overthrowing democracy or actually doing anything major. Destiny, as far as I understood from your previous response, and I want to get this clear before we move on, you're saying it's not just January 6th. There's also all the events leading up to it.
I think that's a lot of it, but we don't even have to.
Is it worth going into it just so we exactly know why you think it's an insurrection or what specific events led up to it?
We can go into that to assign more culpability to Trump, but we don't need that. Just on the events of J6 itself, it is very plainly and clearly obvious, unless you have heavy political motivations to believe otherwise, that what happened was an insurrection. They're just every single element is there, and we can try to pivot with this like, well, usually people do this. I agree that usually people do some things, but just because usually people do something doesn't mean that that's always the case. As you've said yourself, there are constitutional coups. Some people might consider the Enabling Act that Hitler did in order to become a dictator in Germany was a kind of constitutional coup. Some people claim that Evo Morales in Bolivia was trying to enact some sort of coup. Some people say that in Ukraine, when Yanukovych left and that parliament decided to elect a new president, some people call that a coup. There are lots of coups that can happen or rebellions, or not rebellions. There are lots of coups that can happen that are, for a variety of reasons, not involving the military. We can look at the president and say, well, why didn't he try? We can think of a number of reasons why he didn't try. Because he didn't have the support of the military, because he thought it would be incredibly risky, because he thought it would devolve into chaos. He wouldn't have a clean transition of power. Nobody here is claiming that Trump is brave. Nobody here is claiming that Trump wants to lead an armed insurrection to the White House. His own handlers told him that he wasn't even allowed to go to the White House, even when he begged that he wanted the Secret Service to drive him there. So we can think of a number of reasons why Trump, didn't actually order the military to go and show up and start killing people. What I'm curious, though, is to my question, you asked me what my question was, why did Trump sit and watch the violence carry on at the Capitol building and not try to intervene, despite the fact that he had the authority, and many would argue the responsibility to do so? Why would he sit and watch it?
Well, first of all, when Trump, and people may have thought he waited too long, it took him too long to realize the significance of the events, although I don't see the events as nearly as significant as you. We've had tons of protests before at the Capitol. He knew those people were angry and had gone there to protest. But he actually did. First, he went on Twitter and he told everybody there, leave now, don't use violence. Violence is not the kind of thing.
Hold on, just as a quick fact check, he did not say that in his first. He did not say that on Twitter.
He said that in tweets on January 6th. He absolutely did. Repeating the message that he gave to the crowd before they went to the Capitol, which is, I know that you're going to go there and peacefully protest. That was the message that he consistently delivered to them, both before January 6th at the protest and after. Secondly, this was a protest that turned into a riot that was quelled in a matter of hours. It started in the afternoon and it was over in the afternoon. And in order to quell
if it went into the night, would it be a coup then?
As we know now, we should have known this 2 years ago.
Ask him what it would take for it to turn into a coup.
The videos that negated the kind of narrative they wanted to feed. A lot of the people who ended up in the Capitol because the Capitol Police opened the door.
This is just not true. Can we focus on one false fact at a time before we dive into like every conspiracy theory that for some I don't know why people.
It's not a conspiracy
theory. It is a conspiracy theory. We've seen all the videos.
I watched it on video.
Which video? What video did you watch?
The videos that were actually released finally to the public, not handpicked by Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney.
He's just galloping like a motherfucker. This is like a Rob Noor debate.
Fulfilled their promise to make sure the public could see all of the video, not the video that they handpicked.
You're right. I'm sorry. You're talking about the footage that McCarthy handpicked to give to Tucker Carlson that he made a 30-minute documentary out of?
No, I'm talking about the decision by Mike Johnson, a promise he made as a condition to be the speaker to make all of the January 6th surveillance footage available to the public, not just the hand-picked parts that Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff decided to show us. It was all an effort from the very beginning to lie in order to exaggerate and make this event seem much worse than it was, including this insane claim that was an absolute lie that Brian Sicknick was murdered by a savage mob of Trump supporters when he had his skull bashed in with a fire extinguisher until he died.
Okay, hold on. One fake claim at a time. So, firstly, Donald Trump's initial tweets were not to leave. And when you claim over and over again that, they managed to calm it down in 3 hours, that was because finally, like 2 or 3 hours after everything, on Trump's, I think it was his third tweet, after being begged over and over again, after already having the note delivered and sitting on his desk that Ashley Babbitt had been shot and killed, he finally tweeted, okay, you guys can go home. We love you. You're very special. Congratulations. The initial two tweets that Donald Trump tweeted were not telling people to go home. He already knew there was an ongoing riot, and he tweeted to encourage his supporters to continue protesting. Donald Trump was the president of the United States, who was the highest on the pecking order for delivering the National Guard to protect the Capitol building, and he failed to do that. He failed to do that duty that he had that was exclusively under the purview of the president because D.C. is federal ground, and he didn't do it to stop his protesters that were there to try to delay the certification of the vote of an election that he lost. And during that 3-hour time period, all he was doing was making phone calls or telling Giuliani, his stooge, to make phone calls to other congressmen to delay the certification of the vote, which is exactly what he was trying to do, which is exactly what an insurrection is. It's having a large group of people engaged in violence trying to stop the lawful execution of government action, which is exactly what every historical person has believed.
The fact that you have to resort to this kind of nitpicky behavior.
You were nitpicking my arguments.
It took 3
No.
whole hours to get these people very easily to march peacefully out of the Capitol.
No, don't you nitpick
more
my
than anything that I
arguments.
could
Let
do
me
to
just
show
let me
what
just
an absurd
lie.
farce this
Just
entire
let me
thing is.
lie.
Like you mentioned other historical examples. And by the way, like, please stop
Glenn,
using
that's
our
the-
time to like constantly proclaim like
Glenn, that's the-
everybody agrees with me. It's so clearly and provably true that what I'm saying is correct. These are not arguments. Let's just like eliminate that. fluff
You've
and try and
also been
focus on,
doing
like,
that,
the
except you've been
substance. You
wrong
can go
about
and
it.
Do all your post
Fucking
videos,
retard.
like post-debate videos about why you won to your audience. But for now, let's just focus on the facts.
Okay, focus on the facts.
He's using
How did the
Destiny's own
first people get
strategy
into the
against
Capitol
him.
building? Were they let in or did they break in?
Let's go back to the tweet. I just want to focus on the tweet because Destiny, you said that you actually posted tweets encouraging them to actually continue. What tweets were those? Because Glenn said, of course, that was he actually told them to stop.
So when the riots were going on at the Capitol, Mark Meadows, because other people went to him, and other people continued to go in. Initially, it was to talk to Trump, and then I think Justin Meadows, because Trump had locked himself in his room, just watching what was going on, begging him to please tweet out something and stop. Tell your supporters to go home. And for the first 2 tweets that Trump set out, he refused to tell people to go home because he enjoyed the protest, because he liked the violence, because he thought it would probably increase his chances of furthering, delaying the certification of the vote. But those first 2 tweets that he sent, yes, after 3 hours when he realized that it wasn't going to...
Yes. On the 3rd tweet, if you look at any of the examples, even like you mentioned Bolivia, where the coup was not, according to most observers of Bolivia, that Evo Morales tried to stay in office. Evo Morales was given the go-ahead to run for a term by the electoral court appointed by the Constitution to make those judgments and allowed him to run for a 4th term. Evo Morales ran, he won. People in the West claimed, because they didn't want him to win, that
people in the West?
Ironic. The fraud claim ended up being because he was only 8 or 9 points ahead and you have to be 10 points in order to avoid a runoff and win on the first round, that a bunch of Morales votes came in late at night to put him over that 10%. Very similar to Trump's claim about why there was fraud.
It's absolutely not similar. The claim was that those servers that were being ran were completely and totally unmonitored,
Glenn
and
didn't
not
know
part
that
of any
Destiny's
election
had like 12
monitoring
debates over this
procedure,
shit.
and that nobody could verify any of the votes that were going in and out of that server. I absolutely know what I was talking about. And the fact that you say that Evo Morales was allowed to run for another term, the reason why people accuse it of being a coup is because, or why they thought it was because he was in charge of electing or appointing a lot of the court members that would eventually go on to overturn the part of the Constitution that allowed him to run for a 3rd and 4th term. The idea that he just that the court,
because he had been president, but he had been president. Let me make my point about Bolivia. He was president for 12 years. What happened was when he was declared the winner, and even think tanks that had suspected fraud ultimately reviewed all of what happened. And the reason there were so many pro-Morales votes at the end is because the outer regions with indigenous and rural voters, which had always been his base, are always the votes that come in late, and which is what put him over the top. But not only did I report on this, I was the first journalist to interview Evo Morales in English after that series of events. And in order to interview him, I couldn't go to Bolivia. You know why I couldn't go to Bolivia? Because he had been driven out of Bolivia by the military and the police that threatened to murder him and his whole family if he didn't leave Bolivia. He then had to go to Mexico where he sought asylum, and that's where I interviewed him. And then in that next week, the interim coup government, the leaders of whom are now in prison, ended up murdering all of the, not all, but many of the peaceful protesters who were contesting the fact that the military and the police drove Evo Morales out of the country. That's what happens in a coup. When the people with the guns come and say, we're now taking over. We're going to decide who's in power. We don't care that you were certified the winner of the election. We demand that you either leave Bolivia or we're going to murder you. Every event that is seriously viewed as a coup, whether the coups in South America throughout the Cold War, the coup in Iran that has happened, you go through all over the world and you look at coups, almost always they involve not 100 people or 120 people for 2 hours protesting
it was
and rioting in the
1,000
Capitol.
to 2,000
None of them pulled out a gun and discharged
that went
the weapon
inside.
at any point. It involves real sustained violence by the serious factions in that country that dominate with violence. And nothing like that happened here on January 6th.
The reality was there was violence on J6th. You literally, we've all watched the videos.
Yes. There were a small number of Trump supporters, as I said, 10% of the people who were engaged in fighting with the police.
How did they get into the Capitol? Glenn, how did they get into the Capitol?
they used force in order to break in.
Yes.
I'm not saying
So they used force to break into the Capitol. Okay. How did they get through the rest when cops were pointing guns at them saying, don't come in here? What were they doing? They were breaking windows. How did Ashley Babbitt get shot? They were trying to go to places where lawmakers were, where they were saying, don't come. And what did they end up doing? They delayed the certification of the vote or the execution of the law of Congress of the Constitution.
How many people on January 6th?
Glenn, all of these questions are bullshit. How many people is not a real, that's not a real contention. It doesn't matter.
You can not think much of my questions, but I'd still appreciate if you answered them. How many people on January 6th were killed by these quote-unquote insurrectionists? How many people did they kill on January 6th?
It doesn't matter. How many people died in Fort Sumter? How many people died for the start of the Civil War in the United States? How many people died in Fort Sumter?
Just answer to humor me. How many people
I actually don't know the answer to that. Was it bloodless?
On January 6th?
I guess it depends on if you count them taking drugs. Is that killing themselves?
Right. The only people who died, right, you can say some of them actually died, and one of them was shot by the Capitol Hill police. But the people who are being called
no one was
insurrectionists,
killed.
the attempted coup against the most powerful militarized nation in the world, did not kill a single person on January 6th. That was why the anti-Trump media had to invent
That has
a
no
lie
stop with the weird partisan.
Police officer.
Oh my God.
It shows what a
It's
joke
such a
this
partisan. You're
entire
such a
riot
partisan
was.
hack. Just engage with the facts. Both of us agree that you don't need people to die for it to be an insurrection, right? So why do you keep bringing that up?
I'm a partisan. You're the one who goes around devoting yourself and urging people to vote for one of the two political parties. I have never done that in my entire life. I've spent the last 4 months attacking one of the core policies of the Republican Party, which is U.S. support for Israel. I don't go around encouraging people to vote for the Republican Party. You're the one who goes around. Your entire community is filled with Democratic Party partisans. How dare you call anybody else a partisan? That is.
Oh, he's attacking DGG. It's over him. It's over for him.
Glenn, can I bring it back to the debate? So
why did he?
Wait a Destiny. Let's just go back to the debate. You said at no point was this an attempted coup at all. So I know it's not exactly on January 6th, but I want to talk something about this. So there was a phone call. Trump made a phone call to a governor. I'm sure you've heard it went really well. Not really well, but went quite big, of him asking to find 11,000 votes. Would you not call that at all doing a coup or trying to bring votes to win?
No, if you assume that Trump believed that there was serious voter fraud in Georgia, as he did believe and as he was being told by many of his advisors, including lawyers who had been celebrated as some of this country's most prestigious lawyers for years, who were telling him there was ample voter fraud in Georgia, he was trying to say, I don't even need you to prove that every last ballot that was fraudulent be discovered. I just need you to find 11,000. I know the interpretation that people want to give to that. They always want to try and pretend that Trump meant something sinister, like, oh, invent 12,000 cases of voter fraud so that I can win Georgia.
He threatened the people on the phone call.
The context was, I believe there was.
He said it would be more illegal for them to not do what he wanted. He was threatening them.
Believe that claim, but that was the context of what that call was about. And so, I mean, if that is a coup, you call someone up and you say, I think that, first of all, this is not the first time that people have believed that elections were committed by fraud. In fact,
he's going to bring up
Democrats
Russiagate
believe that the last 3 elections that they lost were illegitimate. In 1960, historians widely believe that that election was stolen by a combination of voter fraud in Chicago that made John Kennedy the winner over Richard Nixon. There was that
every
incident
talking
where Hawaii
point, whatever you can to not engage
sets
with the actual
of electors.
substance of what's going on.
1876, there was huge, pervasive allegations of voter fraud. You can sit there and mutter all you want, Destiny. I'm not going to play on your little field. If you don't want to look at history, you don't want to put this in context. The reason is because you have blinders on. You only know the CNN version of the world. You're one of those people who only think
Okay, so then let's just be very clear then. Would you say would you say that the Battle of Fort Sumter, would you consider that the Fort Sumter event, would that have been an insurrection to you? Even only one person died?
Without anything else that followed, without the entire
without
Civil
anything
War
else that
happening?
followed. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I would consider that an insurrection or not.
Okay, so for the whiskey insurrection, where no
Fort Sumter is because of the part that it played in the Civil War. It's the Civil War that made that so historic.
Well, that's fine, but again, your analysis there is ahistorical because people considered that others that were giving aid to Confederate states as they succeeded before any actual violence happened were insurrectionists. So if you think that Fort Sumter was not an insurrection of the Civil War followed, that's fine. That's an insane take. Especially given that Lincoln literally invoked the Insurrection Act right after Fort Sumter, but that's fine if you think that wasn't an insurrection. Okay, so for the Whiskey Rebellion, do you think for the Whiskey Insurrection that also wasn't an insurrection because people didn't die?
Fort Sumter did not just appear out of nowhere. It was not a spontaneous protest that turned into a riot. It was part of what became an obvious attempt on the part of the South to launch a rebellion against the North and to secede from the Union. Lincoln knew what was going to follow. And I think this is an important point. If what happened after January 6th involved acts of Donald Trump trying to extend what happened on January 6th by repeating violent protest or trying to threaten the stability of the United States government in all the different ways that he could have done but chose not to, had he not walked out peacefully of the White House on January 20th, we would be looking at all of these sets of events differently. That's an imaginary history that would make it more like the Civil War. None of that happened, however.
Fort Sumter, if the Civil War
riot and Donald Trump walking out of the White House peacefully.
So the Civil War, or for Fort Sumter, for the Civil War that followed, if that hadn't had followed, even though Lincoln invoked the Insurrection Act to deal with Fort Sumter, you would say that that wasn't an attempted insurrection. That wasn't an insurrection.
I mean, it's such a counterfactual and such a hypothetical that it's impossible to imagine taking Fort Sumter, tearing it out of its context.
He can't answer.
Of a nation that had been heading for civil
he
war
won't
for a
answer.
long
That's
time,
what
where,
it
where
is.
they were doing everything possible to avert it. Lincoln understood that Fort Sumter was not some isolated event of a 2-hour riot that was easily subdued, but knew that the entire South was armed to fight against the North. Take Fort Sumter and completely change every single fact and tear it out of its historical context, and then trying to debate whether or not it's insurrection is a child's game.
Let's say that after Fort Sumter, let's say they were crushed so hard and so fast that there was a sweeping change of mind among the states, and they were like, you know what? Oof, this Lincoln guy seems serious. Let's not go to war and have hundreds of thousands of us die. And they decide to not do that instead. In your eyes, Fort Sumter would have then not been an insurrection.
Yeah, I think there's a good analogy to that, which is the one I mentioned earlier, which is what happened in Russia, where Prigozhin
No, let's just talk about the United States.
No.
No, you want it? We're going to pivot to Russia, a totally different system with a totally different set of laws, with a totally different.
You're saying no. Stick to this.
This is such an easy yes. It was obviously an insurrection. It was so obviously an insurrection. The idea that you're trying to argue that Fort Sumter was only an insurrection because of acts that came after is unbelievable to me. What came after was a rebellion.
And the acts that came before. The idea that Fort Sumter was analogous in any way to January 6th, even taking Fort Sumter and imagining that nothing else happened after, that is what is ahistorical. If you're, what a real coup looks like is what Prigozhin tried to do in Russia. But in the context of Russian history, even in a few years from now, that will be a tiny little footnote because it never posed a serious or meaningful threat to the system of power that governs Russia. It was crushed in 12 hours, and now Prigozhin is dead. So if you have the magnitude of these events is what matters so much. Like when the very first thing you said in that first debate was you tried to create this dichotomous framework, this very reductive binary framework that...
1 second. Let's see what Trump said. 1 second.
Big story on Action News tonight is the newly released phone call, which recorded President Trump urging top officials in Georgia to, quote, find enough votes to overturn the election.
That's right. That recording was released this afternoon by the Washington Post.
The phone call in its entirety lasted an hour, and here is a portion of that recording.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this.
Throughout this call, the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger,
fucking horrible.
Either
fucking
you believe,
horrible.
And this is almost quoting you verbatim, you said, either you believe that the insurrection was justified and that nothing wrong happened on January 6th, or you have to admit that there was a coup. And the very first thing I did when I spoke was linked onto that and said, that is an absurd framework. Of course, there's a gigantic difference between acknowledging that people behaved poorly on
January 6th behaved in ways we wish would not happen, seeing citizens be shot despite being
How
unarmed
many people
while they're
died for
protesting,
the Prokosa
despite
stuff? How many
having
people died
fight.
when he did his attempted coup? What, they shot down a few helicopters? Was it like 5 or 10 people that died? How many people even died for that?
There were more than 24 Russian troops that were killed. Imagine if the group of people at
More
the
than
Capitol
24?
had
Really?
shot down
That might be right.
actual
I just
US
don't
military
remember it being
planes
that
and
many.
military jets and murdered American soldiers.
So for
They
one
would've been
person, so if
crushed
how many people
instantly.
needed to die then on J6 for you to think that that was a coup or insurrection? What is the number then there?
The criterion for me is not how many people died. The criterion for me is how serious of a threat did it pose, or does it pose, to the actual system of power in the United States. And the fact that this 2-hour, 3-hour riot filled with people who were too obese to get off the couch without dropping dead of heart attacks, and maybe had a couple of dozen or a few dozen well-armed and well-trained people there, that it ever posed a meaningful threat to the system of power in the United States is a complete and utter joke. It reminds me so much of the people who tried to say that Russia buying a few Facebook ads or a few Twitter bots was the kind of interference
That's
in the
fine. I don't know
democracy
why
that
you're
was so
pivoting to no one is
unprecedented.
talking about Hillary or the laptops.
Do you know what an analogy is? An analogy is
No,
when
it's
you
not an
say that
analogy.
one
It's a
thing is something
whataboutism and a
you compare
pivot
it
because
to
you don't want to
another.
actually argue the facts of this. That's what it is. They're not
What about it?
analogies. They're not
The
used to
word
strengthen their argument. They're used to
whataboutism,
obfuscate.
the
So
word
just
whataboutism
let's
is such a
actually go
dumb
back.
cliche.
Let's go back to January 6th. So Glenn said that not on January 6th there was no actual. At no point in time was an actual threat to the democracy. Destiny, is that what specific point would you say, or specific example could you say, no, this was a threat?
It's a fantastic delusion. If you were to take Glenn or anybody else that has their whatever their partisan takes on this, if you were to take them, put them in a room with artists and animators, and then have them describe what J6 was, then the animators would draw, I don't know, I guess like 500 Greenpeace activists picketing outside the Capitol building with signs saying, "We don't like that you guys are trying to steal the election." That's what it sounds like. And then maybe a few of them got let in by the Capitol Police to walk around. Thankfully, however, thank God, we're in an era where we all have videos, we all have the internet, we can see the tens of thousands of people outside screaming, we can watch the brawling with the Metropolitan Police. That's not all they did, Glenn. We can watch them brawling with the Metropolitan Police, we can watch them breaking into the Capitol from like 500 different angles, we can watch Ashley Babbitt getting shot as she's trying to crawl through a window where lawmakers are in direct opposition to federal police shooting her. We can watch every single one of these events unfold in real time, and it doesn't look like anything that's being described by Glenn. Instead, the only response is Glenn says we saw the real videos because Tucker Carlson published 0.3% of the footage that McCarthy granted him that doesn't change any of the underlying facts of what we've seen. Yeah, were there some people that were walking through the Capitol building because the police were trying to guide them to another area where they could more easily secure it? Yeah, of course. Were some people guided through and then led into a chamber because police had an easier control of that area than something else? Yeah, sure. But again, we've all seen the videos. You admitted yourself that the first entrance into the Capitol broke in. The first people to breach the barricades broke them down. Nobody was let into a new initial area because the Capitol Police let them in. They were only sometimes ushered through the building because there were more defensible positions, which is obvious if you've watched any of the video footage available of that day, besides the selected clips that people like Tucker Carlson or Glenn Greenwald want you to watch on Twitter. Again, if this was so easy and so simple and there was nobody there but a bunch of fat people, how did the certification of our vote get delayed by 3 hours? And why were we waiting for the national for the first time in all of history?
3 hours.
Oh, as opposed to what, Glenn?
I mean, how did the Republic survive? First of all, let me just.
Glenn, how long was the story about Hunter's laptop delayed? How many days was that delayed? 1 day, and you guys say that was a more serious thing, right? Because the story was delayed by 1 day. Come on.
Facebook suppressed that story all the way up until the time of the election algorithmically. But let me just, I want to go back to the history of what we saw with the videos, because you obviously are not familiar with this history. At the beginning, for 2 years, all of the information that we got about...
I'm sorry, it's so unbelievably fucking disgusting to me. Like, how we go from, like, it wasn't that big a deal, you know, like, oh, like, you know, yeah, obviously there was, you know, there was, there was violence and stuff, but like, it was, you know, it wasn't that bad. And then like, we kind of admit that there was a little bit more than that, you know, a little bit more than just, you know, a little bit of violence. We kind of all seem to finally agree at some point that, okay, well, yeah, there was a little bit more than just a little bit of violence. It was a lot of violence, but like, okay, sure. But like, it was only 3 hours. Oh, okay. So they used a lot of violence and we can see it all on video, and it was live streamed and everybody could see every bit of it up close and personal on their TV screens. But like, it was only 3 hours. Like, bro, actually fucking kill yourself in a video game, obviously. Fucking, it is so fucking disgusting to me that they pretend that they care so much about like the legal system being weaponized and all this shit, and how, you know, lefties and liberals like to play word games, and then they play the most unbelievable fucking slippery word games. They play so fast and loose with every single rule and law and norm in the entire fucking country, in the entire history of our country. Like, these people should be like disallowed from being citizens. Honestly, they should be disallowed from like being alive in this fucking country. Jesus fucking Christ.
January 6th was controlled by
in a video game
commission filled with effectively Democrats. The people Nancy
Tron,
Pelosi let
after
onto
this
the
fucking
commission.
private
Liz
divide.
Cheney, Adam Kinzinger hated Trump almost more than any Democrat did. Those were the two Republicans.
Just as a
Pelosi
quick
broke
thing,
with
you
tradition.
can't lie. That's not true.
But
Pelosi would have allowed
the-
others.
the-
Pelosi was
the
going to
only-
allow people on there, but unfortunately, McCarthy, when he nominated two of those people, Jim Jordan and something Johnson, I think maybe.
Can I just finish?
Well, you're just lying though. But you can't just like lie. You can't just say that things that are lies.
No,
Pelosi accepted people from McCarthy. McCarthy didn't want to nominate more people. That's his fault. Sorry, go ahead. Jim, thanks.
Nancy Pelosi was the first ever Speaker of the House in 225 years to reject the nominees by the opposing party to serve on an investigative commission. It had never happened in the history of the United States. She was the first one to do it. And so
There was never anyone who is currently under investigation by that investigative body before in the history of the United States. Would you ever allow someone to prosecute their own fucking murder like allegations? No.
Nancy Pelosi
let's
said,
directly ask Destiny that question. Why did Nancy Pelosi reject those two Republican? Why did she reject them?
So when Nancy Pelosi was forming this committee,
Here, we're
she
gonna
said
speed it
that
up so we
McCarthy
catch up
could
with real
nominate
time.
5 people. Of those 5 people, I think it was Jim Jordan and somebody Banks. 2 of these people, a lot of the J6 investigations were probably going to be analyzing their behavior specifically, and Pelosi felt like the presence of those 2 people on the committee would have poisoned the committee. So she told McCarthy, I accept your other 3 nominees, just give me 2 others, and they can be part of the committee as well. But McCarthy, because he knew January 6th was an insurrection, and because he knew that the behavior that day was indefensible, decided to pull all the Republican nominees and say, you know what, screw you, I'm not going to give you anybody. You can just have Kissinger and Cheney or whatever, the 2 people that I know hate Trump, so that afterwards, conveniently, people like Glenn can make this same bullshit argument where they say, oh, well, actually, it was a completely partisan committee, so I'm going to ignore the fact that 95% of the people that were actually testifying were Republicans, and ignore the fact that all of it is under oath, and ignore the fact that all the evidence is easily available, and I'm going to handwave all of it by calling it partisan. Meanwhile, I'm going to believe everything that, I guess, Russia Today tweets about it, or everything that Tucker Carlson puts on his show about it, or everything that McCarthy himself says about it. That was the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Eli, I just want to go back to the history of the. First of all, I'll say one more time.
Oh, the videos.
Never before.
I'm gonna move off of that because he brought up Russia Today. Can't lose those bucks, can you, Glenn?
Party to pick their own members to serve on that commission was never subject to the approval of the opposing party until Nancy Pelosi, while the Democratic Party always claims it's upholding norms and tradition, decided to block the choices. And so it's true, the Republicans decided we're not going to participate in a farce where for the first time in 225 years of our history, Nancy Pelosi gets to choose who cannot be on the panel, even though that's who we want and think will be most effective on there. And as a result, Nancy Pelosi ended up choosing those 2 Republicans. They were the ones willing to serve when the rest of the Republicans weren't, and it became a partisan farce. Had she allowed Kevin McCarthy's members, like every other speaker for 225 years had done, you would have had an actual bipartisan commission. As a result, the only videos that we saw
did you link
were
that a
videos
while
that were
ago?
handpicked by these very partisan anti-Trump members who then were allowed to create a narrative filled with lies, beginning with Brian Sicknick getting his head bashed in, and then hiding the videos that undermined their narrative and only allowing us to see the videos that made it look as violent as possible. Then Kevin McCarthy gave the rest of the video to Tucker Carlson so that he could report on them. But that's not even what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that it was Mike Johnson, the newly elected speaker, who released all of the video. And only then did we see the video for the very first time after 2.5 years of these people who were walking into the Capitol being led by the Capitol Police after they opened the doors and led them in peacefully.
They were keeping them the fuck away from the lawmakers.
About January 6th, I said from the very beginning that your tactic is to create this binary where either someone has to
Well,
say
wait, if you want to do facts, that's fine, but I don't need to announce my tactic.
I said from the beginning that it was a riot. There were people who were there on behalf of Donald Trump who used violence. There were police officers who ended up injured as a result, just like happened in the Black Lives Matter protest, although actually police officers, at least one of them for sure, and probably a few others, were killed, and the amount of injuries were far greater. I also don't consider the Black Lives Matter movement, even though it was a lot of people there had insurrectionary intent, anarchist groups and Antifa and others. I don't consider that an insurrection either, though I think you can make a much stronger case that the damage and violence that it posed to our prevailing law and order system was far greater than what happened on January 6th. So yes, you are right that some people use violence to get into the Capitol. Some people broke windows. They were screaming. They were protesting. Things that have all happened before. I don't say that everybody on January 6th behaved properly. I think a lot of them ended up properly being in prison. There were some who used violence. That's because it was a riot and not any real threat to the stability of the United States. It's something that's being exaggerated because the thing that Democrats want to do more than anything is to say that Donald Trump is not just somebody with bad policy or bad ideology. He's an unprecedented threat to American democracy, and his movement ought to be criminalized. And
what were they there to protest? What were they there to protest?
Can you specifically respond to the point that Glenn made about the videos?
It's bullshit. It's literally like, I don't know. That's like a guy telling you that, yesterday I saw UFOs making crop circles.
You're an absolute liar, Destiny, or you have no idea what you're talking about. Mike Johnson is the one who released all the videos. How do you not know that?
We can walk through this. We can walk through this. We can walk through this very simply. We can walk through this so simply. It's such an easy and simple thing, okay? So why do we bring
that water
up
a lot
some
more
police officers
often
let
now?
people into the building? There's only one of two possible reasons. One is to say that, well, the protesters weren't actually violent because they were let in, but we know that's false because we got video evidence proving otherwise. And the second is if you want to allege a much larger conspiracy that the police were actually working to allow protesters or rioters into the building, of which there's absolutely no evidence for. Other than that, the only reason. Let me respond. Let me explain the videos. I'm trying to explain it. Other than those two reasons, there is absolutely no reason to reference this video footage. Everybody knows that there were times, even before Mike Johnson, even before Tucker Carlson, we all knew that there was footage of cops leading people in some places around the inside of the Capitol building. People do this with riots all the time. We know that they were understaffed. We know they didn't have enough people to deal with all of the protesters or rioters that were in the building, and we know that lawmakers were being shuffled through the back trying to make sure that they were in secure areas that protesters weren't. So the idea that it's somehow strange or inconceivable that police officers were leading people into more defensible areas of the building just doesn't make any sense. Like, I can ask very simply, what is the point of saying that there are videos of police officers ushering people or shepherding people into different
Bro,
areas?
we need a fucking rap god over this.
You are the most binary thing I've ever heard. You begin every sentence ever claiming it is either one or two. There's no third or fourth or fifth.
Sure, what's 3, 4, 5?
Neither of those two choices is my argument. The reason why it matters is twofold. Number one is it demonstrates that from the start of all of this, the media and Democrats knew that what had happened was nowhere near sufficiently serious in order to present it as some sort of an insurrectionary threat to the United States. That was why the Brian Sicknick lie was important. That was why it was so important to conceal these videos. That's why it took Mike Johnson, the Republicans, taking over the House and being willing to release all the videos, not just the part that was handpicked for us by Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney, to get the real story. The second part is
you have to handpick videos to make it look like it was some sort of peaceful protest, to make it seem like the cops let them in willingly. Like, I'm sorry, let me be more clear. When I say willingly, I mean like that was their optimal choice. Like they wanted to do that when it wasn't like a desperation move so that they could lead people on a tour of the place instead of like letting them break through and just like run around wantonly and searching for fucking lawmakers. Yeah, no fucking shit. There's some cops leading people around, but those cops testified. Yeah, I was trying to keep them. I was leading them away from the Senate chambers. I was leading them away from where lawmakers were. That's where the cops were leading them. Nobody has testified. Nobody has any evidence that the cops were in on it, that the cops were letting them in and just saying like, ollie Oxenfree, go fucking wild, go steal a podium, go steal some flags, go steal some artwork from inside the fucking Capitol, go find Nancy Pelosi and fucking string her up by her fucking like flaccid fucking ancient like dinosaur neck. Nobody's fucking saying that except for you, because you think for some reason that these people were going in there and just fucking la-di-da doing fucking nothing.
Relevant is not because it proves that none of the protesters used violence. I will say probably for the 8th time that there were a small number, a minority of people who were at the Capitol and who entered the Capitol who used violence. They used violence against police officers. They attacked police officers with physical force. Some police officers were injured, pretty much like happens in every protest that is turned into a riot. But what it demonstrates is that even though you have to try and reach for this maximum number, 2,000 people who entered the Capitol, the vast majority of them were not part of any premeditated plan to overthrow the U.S. government, as even the FBI's own informants acknowledged to them on that day. And I can read you the New York Times article about that. That makes very clear that the FBI's informants on the ground were telling them none of this was planned. This all happened spontaneously. And that even though it is true that a small number of people who were present ended up using violence and fighting with police officers or by engaging in property damage to enter the building, the vast majority of them were nonviolent. And that is the reason why only a small percentage of them have been accused of violence. And the reason that matters is it goes to the question of the magnitude.
A lot of these people pled down.
January 6th posed to the American Republic and to our system of government, which was extremely trivial and minor, both in the context of our own history and how other coups happen in other countries as well.
Okay, so none of this was a response to anything. So, and none of these points even make sense. So the first thing you say is it demonstrates from the start that the media and Democrats knew what happened.
You're the winner. Just get to the point.
You said in the beginning.
You're the winner every minute.
I know that you're scared. I know you're scared of talking about the facts. I know you're scared of facts. That's okay. Let's follow. Let's be brave. Let's be brave. Okay.
Not the part where you call yourself
You're
the winner.
winning, and I don't like that.
So you said that it demonstrates that the media and the Democrats knew what happened wasn't sufficiently serious. That was the first thing we brought up. How does the release of the videos make the event less serious? Was there not a delaying of the certification of the vote? Were there not thousands of people inside the Capitol? Did they not break in to get there?
There weren't thousands of people inside the Capitol. You yourself put the maximum number at 2,000.
What does 1,000 S mean, Glenn? Hold on, maybe English might be a second language. I'm trying to figure out what does 1,000 S mean. Thousands, 2,000 is thousands. There were I'll say 2,000 makes it better. So we know that
that's the maximum number. What the videos show is that at least a significant number of those people did not use violence in order to enter the Capitol. They walked in peacefully and were led
if somebody
in by
breaks
police
into the
officers,
building, the
that
people
goes
that
to
come
their
in
intent.
afterwards, of course, are coming in peacefully in any riot situation like that.
Led in by the police. Led in by the police.
The police are not. But the initial entry into the Capitol was a break-in.
Yes, a small percentage of the people on January 6th.
No,
had
but
violent
Glenn, what Destiny's trying to say is that the first people who will come in will do the violence, and the rest of the people will just follow them in and won't do all the violence.
One second, I'll read your comment.
It's like saying
when
1,000 people
catches
going
up.
through a broken door and saying only one guy broke down the door. 1,000 people were trespassing through a broken door. Like, do you think the cops were leading them around the Capitol building?
Do you know how many political protests have involved?
Oh my God, the
trespassing
pivot, the
on government property, including
whataboutism.
the Capitol?
None of them to try to prevent the execution of the election. That's why this is a historic event. You admitted as much. Nobody's delayed the certification of a vote like this before, and nobody.
It was delayed by 3 hours. It happened on the same day as it was scheduled to happen.
Wait a second, Glenn, can you go back to the original point which Destiny made, which is that if you've got those 2,000 people in the Capitol, and you said only a couple of hundred people, or maybe only 100 people will actually be violent. Destiny said it's only the first 100 people that will go through, they will do the violence, and everyone else will be trespassing. Does that make sense, or what's your thoughts on that?
No, because if that crowd were actually there to overthrow the government of the United States or to prevent a peaceful transition of power, they would not have marched in peacefully to the White House when the police let them in, and then marched peacefully out of the Capitol when it was time for them to go, which is exactly
Holy
what
shit,
happened.
how far
There was
back
no
behind
violence
are
even
we?
needed to subdue this riot or to put an end to it. What it shows is that the vast majority of people there were peaceful protesters. They were absolutely people who believed that the election was the byproduct of fraud. They wanted their voices to be heard in Congress. They wanted the Congress to exercise what their constitutional right was in the view of many people, which was to hear claims of fraud, which is what happened in 2016 and in 2004 and in 2000. The Congress, including members of Congress, objected to the certification of votes. They most definitely were exercising their constitutional right to protest the 2020 election based on the view that
I was trying to find the videos of the Aussie cops doing it here. It was from a helicopter
No,
show.
I agree
Cops
with
channeling
everything he
groups in
just
other
said.
areas,
They thought the
subgroups
election
meeting and
was
forming a
fraud.
massive mob.
And so they showed
Yeah,
up
it's like
to try
basic
to
like
protest the
riot
results of the
cop
election. And they did it with
tactics.
violence. Yes, that's called an insurrection.
No,
when you
no,
don't like how an
90%
election goes
did it with
and you
violence.
show up to have a riot to try to make it so it doesn't happen, that's an insurrection. Yes.
There were a tiny number of people.
It doesn't matter the
unarmed.
number. Why, when you pivot to irrelevant facts like this, there were a tiny number of people. That doesn't matter. It might have been 100. It might have been 2,000. It might have been 5,000. It doesn't matter what the tiny number means.
It does matter. It does matter in terms of the gravity of this threat. And we began the discussion by your conceding that if it were a tiny number of people, like 2 or 3, then it would be very difficult to call it an insurrection. So,
But there were
for me,
And yet
2,000
500
inside.
people was enough to call it the Whiskey Rebellion, even though those 500 men had no chance of taking over the federal government. That was called a whole rebellion, which is more serious than an insurrection. History, legal experts, and the Constitution does not agree with you, Glenn. You are on an island.
This idea that you constantly proclaim that everybody agrees with you and nobody agrees with me, in what fucking world are you living in? You're so
even in the U.S. Congress, the majority of people in the Senate voted that it was an insurrection. The majority of them, not a supermajority. So even in the Congress, they agreed with me. Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but the person that you claim led this insurrection and that everybody agrees was an insurrection is currently leading in all presidential polls to be the next president because Americans
that's because Republicans are insane.
Another person who doesn't see it the way you see it is Jack Smith, who had the opportunity to charge
We're going
Donald
back to
Trump with
this.
insurrection and chose not to.
That's
So
a good argument. If he's really popular, it can't be an insurrection, I guess. Okay.
To put at the beginning of your YouTube video where you're going to be like, everybody agrees with me, you're on an island. As though I'm the only one who makes these arguments.
You know,
There are
August is going to
millions of
put that
people
in
who
there.
think what you're saying is bullshit, Destiny.
Wait,
And the
wait,
fact that
Glenn,
you don't know
Glenn,
that
can we go
shows
back?
how insulated you are.
Glenn, can we go back straight to the right?
August, did I say
without
Austin?
insults, but can we go straight back to the beginning of the debate, which is we started off with
One
trying
second.
to define what insurrection meant. I think we lost that way. So, Glenn, you described insurrection as something that has a potential to overthrow
A serious threat to the system of law and order, and to the stability of power in that country. That's what I think an insurrection or a coup is.
Destiny, would you agree with that?
Basically, yeah. Public use of force by a group of people in order to hinder or prevent the execution of the Constitution of the United States. Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we keep going back to this, but what happened on January 6th? It delayed it for a couple of hours. Was that trying to overthrow democracy? Was that how does that qualify to be an insurrection?
The reason why it qualifies is because, as Glenn accurately pointed out, the reason why the people were there was because they thought the election had been stolen from them. When they were marching down, they were chanting 1776, and they were going down with the idea that Vice President Pence would unilaterally overturn the election that they thought was done fraudulently in order to soft coup Donald Trump back into power as the rightful leader in contravention of what the Congress was supposed to do, which was the certification of the electoral votes. That was Congress's job. They were there on
Just
January
messaging
6th,
August really
specifically
quick.
that day, because Donald Trump asked them to be there. They went to the Capitol grounds immediately after his speech because Donald Trump told them to go there. They broke into the Capitol building because they thought that they could delay the certification of the vote. And then when they were there, they only left when Donald Trump told them to. And a lot of them had said in much in all of their convictions that they were waiting for his orders to go home, of which his first 2 tweets weren't. They were encouragement to continue rioting, and they continued to do so even an hour after Donald Trump, the one who's authorized to deploy the National Guard to the Capitol grounds, sat and watched them do it even an hour after finding out that Ashley Babbitt had died. Again, if you want to say that 2 people is an insurrection, not sure, that's fine, but 2,000 is way over wherever either of us would reasonably draw the line.
I think we've gone over sufficiently the amount of people who were actually there engaging in violence of any kind with any kind of an insurrectionary intent, which is I'll be generous and say that 100 or 120 of them were being. But can I just establish
120 only being violent?
This was true. That in this speech you're trying to depict these people.
No, there's no
as kind
fucking
of like
way. You're
mindless
fucking
zombies who just
retarded
follow
if you
the
think
orders of
that.
Donald Trump and do whatever he instructs them to do. Do you agree that, and can you acknowledge that in his speech there was one time and one time only where he addressed the question of whether or not violence should be used at that protest they were going to at the Capitol, and when addressing that on one occasion, he told them to go there and protest peacefully? Is that something you acknowledge is what he told them?
So I would acknowledge that. However, on my YouTube channel, we try to engage in serious political analysis. So when I'm engaging in serious political,
you're well known for that.
I know, yeah, as are you, I guess. While we're engaged in serious political analysis, when we're looking at what is actually going on or what's in the minds of people, I would never in my entire life imagine cutting one sentence out of an hour-long speech to try to determine what the actual motivation of that speech was. What I would do is I would look at the totality of the speech. It's possible you've never watched it before because you only read Twitter headlines, maybe. I would also look at the actions that happened after of both the protesters and the guy who incited the speech to see, what were the actual intentions of what was going on. In that speech, Donald Trump multiple times made allusions to the fact that our democracy was under threat, that our election had been stolen, that Congress was failing the people to act in how they should, and that Vice President Pence was the last hope of saving our republic, and that if you don't fight like hell, they're going to steal your country from you. So I also know that Donald Trump was informed by the Secret Service that there were people trying to get into the protest or trying to get into his ellipse speech that were literally armed and had guns. The Secret Service said, we can't let them in. Donald Trump said, let them in. They're my friends. I love these people. That's fine. And I also know that after the speech, when Donald Trump told everybody to march to the Capitol, when they were marching, chanting rebellious slogans.
Seeking
they were saying
1776.
1776. They were looking to have a rebellion because, as you
167,
said, they
at
thought the
least
election was stolen.
500.
When they got there and Vice President Pence didn't unilaterally toss the election, what did they do? They said, hang Pence, hang Pence, hang Pence. Pence himself called Trump to complain about this. Trump didn't check in on him a single time that entire day because he was so upset that Pence wouldn't unilaterally toss the election. So when I look at the totality of the events, am I here to say that because he said march to the protest peacefully, that means that it was peaceful? If that was the case, then as soon as Donald Trump saw violence, you know what he would have done? Donald Trump would have made a phone call and he would have said, Miller, why is the National Guard not there right now? What's going on? My daughter-in-law is talking to me. Everybody, or my daughter's talking to me. My chief of staff is talking to me. My lawyers are talking to me. People from Congress are calling me. Everybody's calling me saying violence happening. Why aren't you guys stopping it? He didn't do that. Instead, what he did was he had a 2-minute conversation with Giuliani, and then Giuliani started ringing up all these congressmen saying, hey, don't you think you guys should delay the vote? Give us 10 days, right? What is that? Capitalizing on violence to circumvent the constitutional transfer of power from one president to the next, also known as
It just seems so
It's so
cut
clean
and
and it's so
dry.
easy. And none of the facts that I just gave, by the way, Glenn will not contest a single one of them, even though all of those facts are in the politically partisan J6 committee. How crazy is that?
Tell me when you're done talking, and I will immediately contest.
Glenn, can you particularly respond to
what you said? So,
Glenn, can you respond to those, particularly the 2 points?
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one
I'm very surprised that your incredibly substantive
discussion on a YouTube channel led to a conclusion that was the most negative possible about a Republican candidate that would be completely unpredictable. But I'm going to tell you why in everything that you just said, we can get back to the question and be able to answer
He
the
doesn't
question
know enough
of
about
why it is
Destiny to
that
know
Jack
that Destiny
Smith
fucking
did not
criticizes
actually
Democrats
charge
all
Donald
the
Trump
fucking
with doing
time.
what you claim he did, which had he done would have been a very serious crime, and I think he should have been charged for. The reason is because in what Donald Trump actually said, as opposed to all the secret meaning that you and your Democratic Party community believe he intended to convey.
Democratic
through
community.
Very banal political
Oh, no.
slogans like "Go fight like hell," is the only thing he actually told them was that they should go and march there and be peaceful when they went and protested. And you know what? The vast majority of people who marched to the Capitol did exactly what Donald Trump told them to do, which was to be peaceful. There were let's say 10,000 or 15,000 people outside the Capitol, and you said before they were yelling, which actually is constitutionally permissible and protected. You're actually allowed to yell at politicians when you're angry about what you perceive to be a political injustice. Of those, a small percentage actually entered the Capitol, and of those, a very small number of people used non-fatal violence against police officers, something that we had
One dude
watched
lost
occur
half
for
the fingers on
months
his right hand.
through the summer and into the fall of
Isn't that
2020,
true?
over and over and over and over again, when thousands of Americans were injured as part of a nationwide protest movement that repeatedly ended up engaged with the protesters engaging in violence against the police. This, as I said before, I don't regard the Black Lives Matter movement as an insurrectionary movement. I would never call it a coup, but by every metric, it would be so much easier to make that case about the Black Lives Matter movement than it would be about January 6th, in large part, because the number of people actually involved in trying to use violence was very small. Even the people who used violence were not engaged in even the kind of violence that you often expect, which is, again, pulling out guns, shooting people. There was none of that. That's why nobody died on January 6th except for 4 pro-Trump protesters. So, yes, there was violence on January 6th. Yes.
Okay, we should be back. One second. I'll wait till there we go. All right, we're back. Continuing.
Yes, they ended up delaying this ceremonial ministerial process by a grand total of 2 hours or 2.5 hours. But while it was a riot,
what were they
perpetrated
trying
by
to
a small
do?
number of people, it never got even close to threatening the levers of power of the United States, the most militarized country on the planet. And that is why it is an absolute joke to try and put it up there with the major historical events of the United States, let alone the kinds of coups or attempted coups that take place all around the world that always involve universes greater levels of violence and threats to the status quo than January 6th did.
Wait, so Destiny, just before we continue, I want to go back to what you said because I think it's really important. You made two.
Wait, can I ask one quick question and then you can ask my thing? Glenn, if
Yeah.
they would have managed to kill like one lawmaker, would you call it an insurrection then? They'd like killed like Nancy Pelosi because the government could still continue, like everything could still go on, it's fine.
I mean, I would need some context. Like, was it one rogue guy like who found Nancy Pelosi and shot her? Was it like a huge group of thousands of people dragging her out and hanging her in the public square while the crowd cheered?
If someone was killed,
Like, I would need the context.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry, what was your question?
Let's go back.
There have been politicians killed before, assassinated in the United States before, and we didn't call those insurrections.
Because they probably weren't a group of people trying to prevent the lawful execution of power in the United States.
Which is why I said I would need the context of.
Oh, like a group of people like Trump's audience trying to
circumvent.
circumvent the legal execution of the Constitution? That's like that context, yeah.
Wait, so let's go back to Destiny. You made two points before, and I want to stick on those because actually good points we need to go over. Number one is Trump's full speech, the context of the speech, and what he actually said. And number two is National Guard. So let's go back to Trump's full speech, which he started on, Glenn, but let's actually continue on that point. So Destiny mentioned that if you look in the context, he was actually inciting people to go there, not just peacefully. Would you agree that makes sense, or what's particularly your thoughts? Do you think he was just telling people to go peacefully and that was it?
Why didn't he tell them to go home when they were unpeaceful?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, why didn't you tell them to go home when they were
All right,
private?
I'm trying to answer, but since you're talking, I can't. The way I interpret a speech is I look at the words that are spoken by the person delivering the speech. And when someone stands up in front of a crowd and says, I want you to be peaceful when you go on this protest that you're about to go on, that the Constitution permits you to go on, I take that seriously as an instruction given to his followers not to go there and use violence. And the attempt to suggest that, as I said before, phrases that politicians use in almost every political speech, like let's fight like hell and let's get our country back, things that Joe Biden said over and over in the 2020 campaign and many times before, that somehow that was like a secret code to go tell those people that what I really want you to do, even though I just told you to be peaceful, is in fact go and use violence.
is something that you have to be.
Wait, is that what he
delusional
just
in
did?
order
Sorry,
to
I was
find.
typing something.
Let's get our country back. Things that Joe Biden said over and over in the 2020 campaign and many times before, that somehow that was like a secret code to go tell those people that what I really want you to do, even though I just told you to be peaceful, is in fact go and use violence. It's something that you have to be delusional in order to find. And apparently that is not what the crowd heard, since the vast majority of the people who went to the Capitol, in fact, did not use violence. Only a very small number did.
So then the easy question, wait, on the back of that, just an easy question then. If he, first of all, also no one is saying he's speaking a secret code. Everybody understood apparently loud and clear to go to the White House to protest. That's why thousands of people, the Capitol building protests, that's why thousands of people went in. But the question would be, let's say that I grant all of that. Let's say every single thing you just said is true, and Trump really did just want them to peacefully protest. Why is it that when the rioting had started and people went to him begging him, please, Trump, please tweet and tell these people to go home, why would he not do it?
Well, he did do it. Your argument
After
is that
hours.
he
No, don't lie.
3 hours.
Why are you lying right now?
Can you shut up and let me
you're
answer your
lying.
question?
Okay, go ahead. You can lie. Go ahead.
Destiny's frustrated, otherwise he would let him speak.
Probably 100 times.
Really, name one.
Calling you a liar, what I try and do is go instead.
What have I lied
and
about?
Demonstrate what the actual arguments are, because I don't feel a need to constantly declare myself the
You
winner.
have, to be clear, you haven't contested a single fact I've given because I've been correct on everything.
The reason that I believe that Donald Trump delayed.
A lot of people are going to be really upset with Destiny because of statements like that, but
saw it as a legitimate
he's right.
protest, including people going into the Capitol. So if this entire case now rests on the fact that Donald Trump should have posted a tweet an hour earlier than he should have, and that way the riot would have dispersed after 2 hours rather than 3 hours.
Or maybe he should have done it fucking immediately, you fucking retard. Maybe that's the argument that people are making.
These kind of reaches to try and say that the reason this was an insurrection and Trump tried to overthrow the government or seize power illegally is because he tweeted an hour after you think that he should have tweeted. That is, I mean, we're talking about the smallest details because that's all you have.
You're mistaken. You're mistaken. When you say that it illustrates the triviality, that's not true. What it illustrates is how childlike Trump is, that our only expectation would be to pray for him to tweet to send his followers home. What his actual constitution, hours after the rioting had carried on. Donald Trump is the head of the National Guard that ought to have been deployed to D.C., and he failed to uphold in his duty to do that. Instead, he sat and he watched and he prioritized his own political career by telling Giuliani to make phone calls to congressmen instead of executing his duty as the commander-in-chief to deploy the National Guard to D.C. for hours. So you are right in one sense that begging for a tweet is a bit trivial, but what it really trivializes is Donald Trump's competency and the expectations of him even as a president. Because you're right, a tweet would have been trivial and it wouldn't have been enough. He should have taken charge as the president, and 20 or 30 minutes after violence happened, he should have called in the National Guard to stop it. He sat there for an hour after Ashley Babbitt died and watched it rage on before he finally made the tweet telling people to go home. How is that at all compatible with a president that wanted to be peaceful?
I have a question for you. So I don't mind arguments that Donald Trump should have been faster in deploying the National Guard or dispersing the riots.
He's not contesting a fact.
Or instead of 3 hours. But let me ask you this question. If in fact Donald Trump were trying to lead a coup and an insurrection in the United States, why did he go at all onto Twitter and tell those people to leave
because at some
peacefully?
point it became untenable.
Say, you know what? We're
because it wasn't going to work. It was already failed.
Corrupt government, and therefore I want even more of you to come to Washington and go join these patriots in engaging in violence. Why did he call it off? Why did he tell them for the third time or the second time that day, don't use violence, be peaceful, and go
because
home? That
everyone in the
does not
fucking
sound to
country
me
was watching
like
it
the
and
kind
said
of
it was a
statement that
bad
somebody
thing.
intent on a coup would actually be
It wasn't
issuing.
until
I've
people
never
like
heard
you,
of a
scum fucks like you, sanitized the fucking
telling
event.
The crowd beforehand to be peaceful,
That anybody
and
thought
then
it was
telling
an
them 2.5
okay
hours
thing
later
or not that big a
again
deal.
to go home and be peaceful.
It's because he knew he didn't have the support for it. It's so obvious because Donald Trump doesn't want to actually be caught in the middle of military conflict. He was looking for an easy win and he didn't get it. And as he saw that his supporters were failing, eventually, he kind of encouraged them when people were begging, please, tell him to go home. And then he starts tweeting out how Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done instead of telling him to go home. When it looked obvious that his little attempt had failed, he's not going to go out there with an AK-47 and start fighting with his supporters. And he doesn't want to leave obvious, clear evidence on Twitter. Guys, go coup the government. So of course he speaks, a little bit out of both sides of his mouth, and he eventually tells people to go home because he failed. It's so obvious. Such an obvious reading of the fact.
But he ended up doing exactly the thing that you said a real leader would have done. Your argument is that he did it like an hour late.
No, why do you keep saying 1 hour late? It was like 3 hours after the protest, the rioting had started, and that's a long time when he's getting, and it's also not just that he waited that time period, it's that when congressional leadership and congressional people were calling him and his family, he was making fun of them. What was it? I think it was even McCarthy that made the phone call where he was like, hey, what's going on with your followers out here? And Trump was like, looks like they're a little bit more mad about the rigged election than you are. Like, holy shit. Like, these are insane statements to be making, when instead Donald Trump should be saying, hold on, let me get the National Guard over there. As the guy that's literally in charge of it, it's pretty crazy what's happening right now. I have been tasked as part of my oath to the Constitution.
It's just so far removed from like
He's directly responding to what you
describe
said.
as a coup, what any historian would describe as a coup.
No, well, hold on, wait. You're wrong. Hold on. To be clear, I don't care about any other country. I care about the United States. This is my country. And insofar as what a historian would call a coup or a rebellion, again, you are on an island there. You don't think the Whiskey Rebellion was a rebellion. Not enough people died. You don't think that Fort Sumter would have been an insurrection without the Civil War after it. It's only retrospectively, determined. And also, you think that Donald Trump wasn't an insurrection because he wasn't charged with insurrection, even though nobody from the Civil War was charged with insurrection. Glenn, you are completely on your own legally here with nobody in your corner.
Again, this is what you do. Like you're alone. Nobody agrees with you.
Talk about the number of people who were violent again, Glenn. Go ahead.
I'm going to let my statements speak for themselves about what I said about Fort Sumter and your imaginary Fort Sumter that you wanted me to analyze, and all the other things I said. What you just said, I believe, is a complete distortion of what I actually said, but I'm not interested in
directly exactly what you said.
There's a videotape that everybody can watch and see what I actually said. Yes, the reason why we look at other countries, I don't know if you know this or not, but the State Department calls what happens in other countries all the time coups and insurrections. They condemn
not according to American fucking legal. No, they don't use our legal definition, you fucking retard.
We call a coup or an insurrection. So we have created a long history of how this term is actually used. And this is what I was saying at the start of our discussion, which is that if all you want to do is have history begin with 2016 and Donald Trump.
Oh my God, he's going back to that argument they used during the Alex Jones debate.
Definitely catastrophizing everything associated with Trump. That's basically what the media has done for the last 7 years, is trying to pick Donald Trump as a never before seen evil. The reality, though, is that there is a long history, which I think is
he's not evil.
Consult with
his fucking movement is evil.
These words have always been used.
He's a retard that capitalized,
including by the American government that you're a part of, or that is your government because you're an American. There's a long record of how we use these terms, and there is no case in which we would resort to trivialities like the leader waited an hour too long to tell people to go home, or there was a protest that turned into a riot that delayed the certification of an election by 3 whole hours. And now we're going to impose
how long is this going to loop?
Countries because we believe that there was some kind of an insurrectionary attempt that was serious in nature. Yes, if you just look at everything in isolation and say, as long as I can prove that some people on January 6th did something bad, which is that framework at the beginning you tried to create, this binary framework, then it means that I win. Then yeah, that is, I agree. You can definitely prove that there were people who did bad things on January 6th. But when you look at it in the context, this context that you insist should be ignored, of historically how we've used these terms, both in our own history and in the history of other countries, it is a joke to try and apply those terms to this 3-hour riot.
So Glenn, let me ask you a question about that. So about the 3 hours, about waiting 3 hours to do the votes, they did it 3 hours later. So instead of a full insurrection, is that at least, could you say that's an attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power?
No, I think it would be a preposterous statement to draw from that conclusion. I think if Trump didn't walk out of the White House peacefully, as he did on January 20th, and had in the interim tried to incite or encourage more violence on the part of the people in the government and in the military who were loyal to him to engage in violence in a way that he really actually tried to stay in power, then I would be more open, more amenable to the idea that this was actually an attempted coup or an insurrection. The fact that political protests delay important proceedings all the time. That's, in fact, one of the purposes of political protests is to be disruptive, to make the people in the government understand that there are people in the citizenry who are angry about a perceived injustice. That is often the goal of political protest. And if the goal of this protest was to delay by a couple of hours a certification that is ministerial in nature and that happened on the exact day the Constitution requires it to happen, if that's all we're arguing about, then to me it settles the whole case.
that
What was the
is
goal of the
just
protesters?
A complete joke.
What were they there to protest?
Make themselves heard. I believe they were there
Make
to
themselves heard about what? What were they there to make themselves
Just
heard about?
message Destiny
About
what
the
I
fact
just
that they
said.
believe
See
that
if
Donald
my
Trump was the
argument gets brought up in the debate.
2020 election, Joe Biden had, and the Democrats had engaged in fraud in the election in order to win that
Put
election.
my mark on
So they
history.
didn't believe in
therefore,
So they didn't believe in the outcome of the election. They showed up to protest the outcome of the election. Violence
Correct.
was used, and they delayed the certification of the vote. Right?
by
Do
2
you
or 3
disagree with
hours.
any of those
Yes,
facts?
that-
All of those happened.
No, I do not. No.
Okay, which
I
one
don't
of those
disagree
four?
with
Okay,
any of
we'll
those
go
facts.
over them again. Okay, you agree that they were protesting the results of the election.
I just said I don't agree. I don't
No,
disagree
he
with
said
any
he
of those
agreed with all of
facts.
them.
He agreed.
He
You
said
agree
he
with all
agreed.
four of those facts. Then what part of this is not an insurrection? What's
The fact that
missing?
It's a complete. The fact that the number of people who engage in violence and the way they engage in violence was very similar to how protests often turn into a riot. It is universes away from any kind of actual serious threat.
I agree.
Credible
No,
to the
Glenn,
power of the United States.
We agree that this was a riot. No one is denying this was a riot. Yes.
Right, it was a riot.
Yes,
Whenever
it was a
riots
riot.
bring in violence into
Yep.
the political system, and one of the protesters, an unarmed protester, ends up dead, and police officers end up injured, it's a lamentable act. It's something we don't want to encourage. It's a bad thing. But this is so much to me like the inability to say that a foreign government or a foreign leader is
No
doing
one is-
bad things
no one is
without
talking about that.
immediately calling them Adolf Hitler, and not understanding that there's a difference between a bad event or a bad person or a bad act and what the Nazis did. Like everything has to go to the furthest extreme.
No one is
So
taking
yes,
anything
January
to a
6th
further
When is
was a
Destiny-
bad, violent riot.
Compared them
It
to
was a
Nazis.
riot.
Happened,
It was a
but it
riot.
came
Does anybody
nowhere
know?
near
Has he said that?
undermining or
He brought up
subverting the
Hitler
system of law
one
and
time
order in the
to
United
illustrate
States.
that it doesn't have to be a
Intended to
violent
do so.
coup.
It
Nor
did
was
undermine it.
intended to do that.
It was intended to. You said it. You said they went there to protest the election results. It turned into a riot, and they delayed the certification of the vote.
By
Every
a couple
core
of
element.
hours, by a couple of hours.
It doesn't
That is
matter.
a-
They still did it. That was the goal. That's what they did. They weren't that successful. That's not an argument that it wasn't an insurrection.
If you think that that was the goal, then I think your argument is even weaker than I thought so the first time. If you believe their goal was to delay this ministerial act by Congress to make it happen at 4:30 p.m. instead of 1:30 p.m. or whenever
That
it was
wasn't
scheduled,
their goal.
No,
Their
the
goal was to
goal was
stop
to
it
delay it
completely.
they
completely.
intended to do, and that is what they succeeded in
They
doing.
just failed.
Then the idea that that was an insurrectionary intent to delay a ministerial act, a ceremonious act, by a couple of hours so that they could have their grievances heard, then I think it's even a weaker case than I thought so, having listened to you for 3 hours the first time.
Okay, and that's fine. But historically, whether we're talking the Whiskey Rebellion, which used to be called the Whiskey Insurrection, whether we're talking about Shays Rebellion, whether we're talking about Nat Turner's Rebellion, whether we're talking about any of the insurrections that were protesting and insurrecting against the Fugitive Slave Act, whether you're talking about literally any of these things that were historically all understood to be insurrections that Congress was talking about in the 50s and 60s where they passed the 14th Amendment. These were all understood to be insurrections. They were all.
Were those
We're not
coups?
talking
Were
about a
those
coup right now. We're
attempted
talking about an
coups?
insurrection, aren't we? Who's talking about a coup?
No, coup is a word that we've been using from the very first second that we started talking.
I'm sorry. I believe that in the beginning of this, Eli, I'm sorry, pull the tape. Were we talking about defining an insurrection or a coup?
No, it's an insurrection.
I asked you for both. I started.
We haven't even gotten to coup yet. We can get to coup. If you want to get to coup, the electoral slates, that's a way easier argument for me, okay? But if you're having trouble with this argument, like.
That's certainly something I've been talking about quite a bit, and I've used the word coup many times.
Of course, because you're trying to obfuscate. Yeah.
It's totally fine. So let me ask you: do you think what happened on January 6th rose to the level of an attempted coup?
Firstly, I would say that just to reiterate in the past, your understanding of insurrection is unique and ahistorical. Just to be clear.
Stop saying that because it's so untrue and it's so irrelevant. Even if I were the only one who thinks it, it's not proof that I'm wrong. The idea
I didn't say it was proof.
I didn't say it's proof that you're wrong. Agrees with you.
I'm not saying it's proof that
ridiculous.
you're wrong. I'm just saying.
Not everyone on your side. Not everyone is on your side, Destiny. Even though I know you sit on a YouTube channel with Democrats and people who tell you that you are.
That's
There's a much
Can we
bigger
go
world
back
than your
to-
YouTube
can we
channel.
go back
out
to
there.
the actual point?
Yeah, so the actual the coup part, if I were to look at coup or call it a self coup, I guess, since Trump was still in power, the coup part is going to be Donald Trump on 2 or 3 different forks. One is going to be trying to bully at least 7 different state legislatures or electoral bodies to change the results of their electoral votes,
Yes.
knowingly that he was working with false evidence, because every single person that he entrusted to gather data about voter fraud had told him prior to the statements he made about these things that the voter fraud wasn't real. That would be the first part. The second
I'm sorry
part.
can you just answer first?
what happened on January 6th, an attempted coup? I realize there's other things.
This is the I'm getting it. This is the culmination. The second part is the electoral slates scheme, where Donald Trump and his people basically contacted 7 different states and got all these people involved in making and testifying to falsely being electors of these states to be sent to Congress, and then I guess the climax of that would have been in Congress, Donald Trump asking Pence, when he gets these fake slates of electors, to ignore the real electors, say that these particular electors, it's too hard to figure out what's going on, and then throw it to the House to have the House essentially, because the Republicans were controlling the parts of the House they needed basically in order to
which part
elect
of
Donald
this
Trump
is
as the president for
Glenn
them to make
going
a
to say
determination on the election.
isn't...
That part was an attempted self-coup, yes.
He's not
Because
going
he
to
was
contest the
controversial.
facts.
So you do think your argument is also that it's an attempted coup, not just an insurrection. I don't know why you got
because the self-coup part, I'm explaining, because the coup part is fundamentally separate from the insurrection part. There were 2 different things going on that day.
All right, let me because I think it's a good point to kind of like summarize. We've been going almost 2 hours, which is like what we said was our kind of target goal. But so let me just tell you about all of that, my view of what all those events are, which is that as has happened before in elections, in American elections, when people perceived or believed that there was fraud in the election.
No one has ever done this before in the entire history of the United States.
Legitimate winner was declared the loser, as has happened previously. Trump exercised all of his legal recourses. He was the leader of the executive branch, and he went to the 2 other branches of government, first to the courts, and then when that failed, to the Congress, using a theory that some lawyers had told him, and I don't mean like
he's not contesting the facts
for that reason.
No,
I mean, lawyers who had previously been regarded as some of the most prominent and prestigious lawyers, like Rudy Giuliani, not by me, but by many people, celebrated for many years, and John Eastman, people like that, had told him that this was a role the vice president had. There was an incident in 1960, albeit different, that could have suggested that that was part of the vice president's duty. He went to Congress in order to appeal to the legislative power. And when that failed, when he exercised all of his legal options in the judiciary and failed, and then exercised his recourse in the Congress and failed, he walked out of the White House on January 20th before noon peacefully and turned over peacefully the levers of power to the certified winner of the 2020 election, which was Joe Biden.
Real quick, just on that
in my view,
explanation,
what
happened in 1960 that was comparable to this event?
There was a dispute about which candidate had won Hawaii, whether it was Richard Nixon or John Kennedy. First, Richard Nixon was declared the winner. Then John Kennedy, on a recount, was declared the winner.
It wasn't going to change the outcome of the election.
Slates of electors to the Congress, and
in
Richard
good
Nixon,
faith,
presiding over the Senate, like Mike Pence, serving that function, declared that the real winner of Hawaii was John F. Kennedy. The reason I say
they did that in good faith. They did that in good faith because everyone already knew that Nixon lost. John F. Kennedy won. But they didn't know what to do. This had never happened before, so they sent 2 slates of electors. And by the time of the certification of the election, I think that it had been fully adjudicated. But they were doing this in good faith. What happened with Trump is, in some cases, they lied to the slates of electors and said that we would only use or we will only use your votes, your electoral votes, if we find fraud that would overturn the election in your state, right? And in some cases, those people knew that they were fake electors, and they were just doing it to keep Trump in power. It just depends on which state we're talking about. I think it was Arizona that they lied to, in Pennsylvania, but I'm not 1,000% sure.
It's not comparable is because in that case, the state had certified
exactly
the last resort.
Okay, let's speed it back up.
Yeah, that's great. So I was hoping that you didn't know that. The fact that you know that is even more disingenuous then, because the issue with Donald Trump's slates of electors.
I'm going to explain to you why I cited that as the only example. I want to be clear. I don't agree with the legal theory.
But you just cited it and you didn't explain it any further until I asked you.
Because you interrupted. Had you not?
No, you were done. You moved way past it. I let you move past it.
No. The relevance is that the reason reason why there were well-qualified actual members of the bar who had long been advising Donald Trump on a whole bunch of legal matters had come up with this theory was because that was the one time in history after 1876 when the Electoral Act and the procedures were implemented when there was an actual dispute about which slate of electors should be chosen. And Richard Nixon, serving as the presiding officer of the Senate, was widely complimented because
Does he think the
acknowledged
YouTube
that the
thing
winner
is
of
a
Hawaii
good
was not
barb?
himself, but was John Kennedy. Implying that he had some
Yes, he
discretion
does think
about
that
which to
because
choose. The
he
reason
keeps
I
on saying it
said
over and
that
over,
wasn't
and it's his
controversial, the reason
only
I never thought Mike Pence had the
attack.
authority to do what Donald Trump believed he had the authority to do was precisely because Richard Nixon was duty-bound to choose the actual certified winner of Hawaii, which is what he did. Nonetheless, he was complimented because he did have the ability to choose otherwise. If Mike Pence had done what Donald Trump had requested that he would do, and that some lawyers told him Mike Pence had the duty to do, I have no doubt about what would have happened, which is that that would have then gone to the Supreme Court and asked the Supreme Court whether or not Mike Pence in fact had the authority to do what he did. The Supreme Court would have ruled there was no inclination that the Supreme Court had to interfere and to make Donald Trump the presidency. They had the president. They had several opportunities to do it and refrain. He would have lost in the Supreme Court and he would have left office just as he did once he exhausted all of his appeals in the other two bodies, branches of government, and left peacefully on January 20th. The fact that Trump left peacefully on January 20th is, to me, the most dispositive fact. And it was a fact that will never change. It will always be true.
Because he already lost. He had to accept that he couldn't do anything else.
Or serious attempted coup, nothing short of laughable.
And he should have accepted that months before.
About him, but I think ultimately that's how it will be understood.
That's fine. I'm sorry. A failed coup is still a coup. Whether you leave afterwards because it failed, it doesn't change the fact that the coup attempt was.
To that level. I don't think
that's great, but you're literally willing to retroactively analyze whether Fort Sumter was an insurrection based on the events that came after you would change that.
Let's not go over the old ground that we've already
I understand. I know facts are hard, but hold on. Just in response to what he said. So in response to what he said, I know you're upset. I know facts are hard. I know. I'm sorry. So the reason why I'm upset that you brought up 1960 and why I'm even more upset now that you know the details of it is because the issue was never that multiple slates of electors were sent, because state legislatures almost certainly have the ability to do that. The issue was that Hawaii sent 2 sets of electors because it was legitimately an incredibly close. I think it was off by like 140 votes. I understand that you did, but the issue with what Trump did was they had electors in these 7 states falsely attest that they were authorized and duly elected by the state assemblies in order to send their electoral votes to Congress. That was a lie. It was perjury. They were encouraged to do it by people under Trump, and they did it on a bullshit legal theory from Eastman that everybody knew was bullshit. And they literally, they actually... Yeah, that's you can always find
and
one
Rudy
crazy.
Giuliani and not Sidney Powell.
That's great, and
Those
I'm sure I can find a doctor who'll tell me that acupuncture will cure my diabetes. Okay, just because you have one person.
I don't agree with those lawyers. The point
every
is Trump
single
had
other
lawyers telling him
Trump,
it was a valid.
Trump had.
And he
hold on.
lost.
Let me finish my. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. The issue is that these electors transmitted their votes to Congress falsely. They lied, and they were encouraged by Trump's campaign to lie. They were not authorized by the state assemblies like they were in Hawaii in 1960 to do so, which is why the comparison is insane. And by the time those electoral votes got to Congress, the plan from Trump, the plan from Eastman at that point, wasn't to say that Pence could declare a winner after the legitimate negotiations had happened in Congress over whether or not these electoral slates were real. The goal was to say Pence was going to just say, hey, actually, I don't know where these came from. We're just going to go ahead and throw it to the assemblies in the House and let them decide, which Republicans had 26 and Democrats had 24 state assemblies, which would have meant that Donald Trump arguably could have won the election. This is undoubtedly a self-coup. Nobody thought this legal theory was valid. Even Eastman called it highly into question multiple times during some of the memos that he sent himself. And the only 3 lawyers that Trump took advice from, in opposition to his actual qualified lawyers, were Eastman, Giuliani, and Powell, who are so much clowns. Even people like Tucker Carlson were texting back and forth with Fox News execs saying how annoying it was that Sidney Powell was making claims that they had to carry on the network because everybody knew that she was full of shit.
Rudy Giuliani spent most of his adult life as one of the most revered lawyers and political figures in the United States, to the point where people thought when he ran for president in 2008 that he was deemed the front runner.
And then he gave a speech in front of the Four Seasons Landscaping Company.
I never thought so. I always have despised Giuliani. But the way the criminal law works is very often if a defendant is charged with some sort of criminal intent and they can prove that they had actual lawyers who were advising them that what they were doing was legal, that goes directly to their intent of whether or not they understood. You have no idea what you're talking about.
You're dead wrong.
Destiny. I practiced law for so many years. If you can prove that you have lawyer letters telling you that what you've done is actually legal, it is highly relevant in a court of law as to whether or not you had criminal intent, because people are expected to rely on the advice of their counsel to understand what the law is. I think Trump's theory, for the reason that I explained well before you took 10 minutes to do so, was baseless. But he thought it was valid because he had lawyers who were telling him that it was.
You're right. Okay, that's okay. Maybe you're right there. You're the lawyer and I'm not. Can you tell me what is it called if I do a thing with a lawyer where we both make a plan to break the law? What is that called, Glenn?
if you have lawyers who are giving not only deliberately false advice, but false advice that the client knows is false, just to create a fraudulent scheme that you had legal counsel, that then will of course be relevant to the question of whether or not that person had criminal intent. But
Strange.
in this case, these lawyers were not, again, these were not personal injury lawyers that he just pulled off the street and paid a bunch of money to write a letter that he told them to
Now
write.
they are.
These were lawyers who had operated at the highest levels of the United States government, who had been regarded as highly prestigious lawyers who graduated.
But they're
some of the
also
best law schools
indicted in some
country.
cases as co-conspirators. So if they're indicted as
but not
co-conspirators, you
then.
can't use the fact that they're giving you legal advice because you seek them out for that particular legal advice, trying to break the law. You can't use the excuse that their lawyers giving you advice. It is literally one of the key exceptions to attorney-client privilege, Glenn.
He had not been accused of that. They had not been accused of fraud.
They hadn't been accused of it when they were breaking the law. That's normally how breaking the law works. Yes, correct. Usually when you're in the process of breaking a law, you're not being accused currently of doing it. But he was working at advice that was being...
At the time, if you look at it from Trump's perspective, which is what the law is required to do, to determine not whether he was wrong in the theory that he embraced, but whether or not he knew that it was illegal and pursued it anyway, the fact that he had not only various members of the bar, but 3 lawyers who had long been regarded as highly prestigious, who graduated some of the best law schools in the country, who, in the case of Rudy Giuliani, was one of the most revered public figures for decades in the United States. I believe he was Time Man of the Year once. He was as celebrated as you will ever find after 9/11. He had actual lawyers who were giving him this advice, writing legal memos about why Mike Pence had that theory. When Mike Pence concluded otherwise, Trump accepted his defeat and left the White House peacefully. He had resorted to all the legal recourses that he believed he had, that lawyers told him that he had, and when those were exhausted and he lost, he didn't order the military to keep him in power. He walked out of the White House.
So then what? So you're a fan of using one sentence to incriminate somebody or exonerate them when Pence and Trump were talking, and Trump said, when Trump said,
what
"Well,
did you say?
you said
I'm
you're a fan
of
of using one sentence to either exonerate or convict somebody, I guess, because when Trump said march peacefully, you think that's okay. So the peaceful thing completely exonerates Trump from the hour-minute rile-up that he did before the insurrection. That's fine. When Trump was talking to Pence and Trump said, "You're too honest, Mike," after asking for like the 50th time to decide the election on his own, what did Trump mean when he said that?
I have no idea if that's being conveyed accurately. I have no idea what Trump's intention was, but we have all kinds of evidence that Trump vehemently believed that the advice he was given by lawyers was advice that he found persuasive. It wasn't just whispered to him, it was conveyed to him in the form of legal memos of the kind that lawyers write all the time to lay out the arguments, and there were not just 3 lawyers in the United States.
Eastman literally thought that their little scheme, Eastman literally thought their scheme would get overturned at the Supreme Court. He knew it was bogus legal theory. He literally had said this, and they were just trying to buy time for their coup. That was the whole point.
Because Trump, because Trump believed that there was actual fraud in the election. He wanted more time to be able to find the proof of that fraud.
I agree. You're justifying the insurrection. He wanted to coup the government because he thought they stole it from him.
That's proof that it's
we'll
not
find
an
the proof
he knew it was gonna
after.
End up at the Supreme Court. Had Mike Pence. You keep trying to invent false histories.
No, you're giving like a mens rea for insurrection. He thought the election was stolen, therefore he could try to flip the election.
Mens rea is vital in every single criminal prosecution. If you don't have mens rea, you don't have a crime.
That's literally not true because strict liability crimes can be convicted with no mens rea. But okay.
Unless you have, which are the tiny minority of prosecutions.
Sure, that's fine. But mens rea is not. Just because you didn't know you're doing an insurrection doesn't save you from the fact of the matter of it being an insurrection and you being held to account for every single thing related to it.
These are empty arguments. It's
yeah, I have to end stream in like 15 minutes, y'all. This needs to end.
Wait, Glenn. I think we've gone around quite a bit. We've probably gone everything. What time do you want to finish? Because it's been around 2 hours.
Honestly, unless there's like, we haven't discussed the issue of like what the FBI role is, although we did talk about the fact that the FBI had informants on the ground. I don't really need to go into Ray Epps, a thing I've never really been a fan of. I do think there's a question about why the FBI didn't know more, or if they did know more, but I feel like we debated that a lot in the first debate, which was 3+ hours. I feel like we're kind of at the end of the discussion. It's been just a little over 2 hours, so I'm fine ending it here unless Destiny feels like there's some really pressing issue that we haven't covered.
No, I think this is. What do you think about the whole elector scheme?
I think Trump believed that there was an actual good faith reason to believe that there was fraud committed in the election. And he was told that if you submit various electors that would buy them the time to find the proof that they hadn't yet found.
So you think that as long as Trump thought there was fraud, he was authorized to do basically whatever he wanted as long as he could find a lawyer that agreed with him?
No, I believe that that entitled him to exhaust every legal recourse in the other two branches of government, which is what he actually did.
And then he did more, and then he broke the law afterwards.
His obligation was to do what he did, which was to walk peacefully out of the White House on January 20th as part of the peaceful transition of power.
Oh my
to Joe Biden.
God.
Do you think the fake electors were
That's
legal?
the actual
Having people
history.
testify to being electors when they're not? You think that's okay because he thought that maybe there was election fraud? He could have those people lie about being the duly elected electors or appointed electors?
I mean, I contest that characterization, but I also think that
What do you
it would have been
contest
part
of
of
that?
what would have been that it would have been part of what would have been contested as part of the judiciary. All of this would have ended up in the courts. You want to create this false history about how if Mike Pence had done something that he didn't actually do, what Trump would have done. My belief is that Trump would have left the White House on January 20th, no matter how many other proceedings he ended up resorting to. There was the Supreme Court there, even though people were claiming that Amy Coney Barrett had only gotten this position because of a promise that she made to vote for Donald Trump in the election. None of that ever happened. In the real history, in the actual history, once Trump lost everything that he tried in the legal process, he left office peacefully. And that is
If
the
he
core
would have
fact
delayed-
that I believe defeats everything you say will never change.
Gotcha. So if he would have managed to delay the certification of the vote by, let's say, a month because of a Supreme Court case they wanted to wait for whatever reason, and then they do the electoral investigation, they find out there's no fraud, and then he leaves peacefully after staying in office longer than he should have for a few weeks, would that have been okay?
I mean, you're just, again, you're trying to create false histories.
That's literally what he was trying to do.
If Trump convinced the Congress that there was sufficient evidence of fraud, that a month was required to investigate the evidence of fraud that Congress believed had there, and they wanted to delay it by a month, and then Congress went back and certified the actual results of the election, and then Trump left peacefully on January 20th, my view would be the same. As long as Trump confined himself to appealing to the other two branches of government and did not try and use his command of the military or his command of the other armed parts of the government to keep himself in power, words like coup and insurrection are things that only MSNBC fans get excited about.
Oh
and
my
believe. And I think it's the reason
God.
why Trump is leading in all the polls, because people obviously don't think that what Trump did rose to a level of criminality, even to keep him out of the White House, much less to put himself in jail.
And then when Trump told his Justice Department, when he told Clark to go and talk to, I think it was the acting AG Rosen and then the acting deputy AG Donahue, that you guys need to write a letter to the state saying we have all this evidence of election fraud, and that if they refused, Clark told Rosen that he'd basically be fired and he'd be made acting attorney general. And when that same scheme was brought up in the Oval Office, and I think half of the White House staff threatened to quit if Trump went through with it, do you think that any of that was improper? Asking his Department of Justice to lie to the states about election fraud?
If you believe, as I do, that Trump's contention that the 2020 election was pervaded with all sorts of fraud and that he was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election, asking his Justice Department to find that evidence and telling them that he would fire them if they refuse looks a lot different in its intent than if you begin with the assumption that you are beginning in, that Trump knew that he lost and that everything he was trying to do was an attempt illegally to stay in power. And as I've told you many times, that narrative that Trump was willing to do anything, even outside the law, as long as he could stay in power, is completely contradicted by not only the things that he did do, but by, more importantly, the things that he didn't do. And that you can try and create every alternative history that you want. It's very difficult to analyze hypotheticals like that where we don't have any context or any details for what happened. I can look at the events that happened in real life, and those culminated with Donald Trump not calling in the military, not trying to rile up the armed factions of the government as he could have done. Certainly, a lot of them would have been loyal to him. He could have caused a lot of violence, a lot of internal conflict, maybe even a civil war in order to stay in power. He did none of that, and he transferred power peacefully to Joe Biden in the way that has been done since the beginning of the
Do you think
Republic.
Donald Trump, does he bear any responsibility at all for what happened on January 6th?
I mean, he has responsibility, but not in a way that could ever be legal. I mean, he clearly riled up that crowd. He got people riled up. I mean, Rachel Maddow and Bernie Sanders once riled up one of their fans.
I'm not
so
asking
much
about
that they
Maddow or
went to-
Bernie
Oh my
Sanders.
God!
I know, I'm
Nobody
saying, do you think Trump at
blames
all?
Bernie
does he have any
Sanders
involvement?
for that, dude. Even the
reason I'm gonna
people
bring
who
up
were
analogies,
shot
even though you
don't
interrupt
blame
me, tell me
Bernie
that I
Sanders for
shouldn't.
that.
It's because you don't want to
tests
actually
whether
say
or
something
not-
bad about
it's
Trump
because
you need to be
it's
partisan.
tests
Jan
whether or not-
6th.
It tests whether or not you actually
Glenn
have any
Greenwald coped
consistency.
I have
super
all
hard.
the
He lost.
consistency in the world.
Wait a sec.
So,
Glenn, you
I believe
mentioned. Glenn, you mentioned that.
I think
crowd.
if he's going to if he wants to prolong this by asking me questions, I'm going to insist on the right to answer the questions in the way that I actually want. And if that means bringing up analogies or metaphors,
Yeah,
or
well, here, I can
comparable
help with the
acts to
analogies.
illustrate the
If
principle,
anybody else did the
then-
same
then
thing
that's
that
what
Trump
I'm
did
gonna
on
do.
J6,
I'm only gonna-
I'd say it's an insurrection.
I'm only going
Easy.
to we're kind of like at the point where it's an interrogation. I'm kind of am flattered that Destiny seems not to want to end. So he's just kind of now asking me a bunch of questions, which I'm happy to engage in for a little bit longer, provided that I'm able to answer the questions.
We got like 5 minutes left before I gotta raid out, guys.
A lot of people have inspired other people to commit crimes. Rachel Maddow and Bernie Sanders, as I said, once got a Democrat, a liberal
I've never
family
even
member
heard that
so
Rachel
riled up
Maddow was
the
involved
belief
in
that
that,
the
dude.
Republicans were fascist and in bed with the Kremlin, that one of them actually went and their names and shot up Republican congressmen to try and kill as many of them as he could, and almost killed Steve Scalise. So if you were to ask me, did Rachel Maddow and Bernie Sanders do anything to cause that person to go and do that? I would say yes, but not in a way that they bore any blame. They got people riled up, and sometimes if you get people riled up, some of them are going to go and commit crimes. The Supreme Court has said you can never be held liable for what other people
he's
do as a result of being
Alex
inspired
Jones
by your
type now.
speech.
He's friends with
So
Alex
yeah,
Jones.
if you go
and-
around and constantly claim that the election results were the byproduct of fraud, I think it's predictable that some people might engage in violence. It's the kind of thing that you might even think, if it really happened, violence might even be justified. But I don't think that Donald Trump did anything illegal or anything that could be prosecuted, which is why, again, Jack Smith did not charge him with inciting an insurrection, because there's nothing in what Trump said that was anything other than constitutionally protected.
Well, so Destiny,
He's not even being
what
fair.
Ben said is really
He's-
what lies at your whole basis of the argument.
This isn't being
was
fair
that
to
Trump
Trump.
did not tell them exactly to it.
This
go
is
into the
running
Capitol.
defense
like
for
what Glenn
Trump.
said is he heated up the crowds. He did heat up the crowd, and he did talk about false election, which did incite them, although he didn't actually tell them to do that. That's what Glenn.
He told them to go peacefully. That's what he told them.
He also said to fight like how they're stealing your country.
But wait a second, Glenn, did he not just say he heated up the crowd?
Yeah, he heated up the crowd because a lot of crowds you're allowed to heat up crowds. I've heated up crowds before by saying
You're not allowed to
"Oh,
incite
look,
a
the
riot."
NSA is spying on you in a way that's unconstitutional. Now, maybe some of those people might have been motivated to go to the NSA and try and plant a bomb because I heated them up, but it wouldn't mean that I was responsible. The only thing that Trump said about violence and whether it should be used on January 6th was, don't do it. Go to the Capitol and be peaceful. Obviously, they were agitated and riled up as a result of a political speech. That's what you want to do in a political speech. You want to agitate people and get them riled up about an injustice that you're there to speak about. That's what every good political speech does.
One final question. I'm so curious on this. For Trump legitimately thinking that there was voter fraud, legitimately thinking that the election was stolen. So despite the fact that all of his campaign people, I think Bill Stepien is field director, despite the fact that Chris Miller from intelligence agency, despite the fact that William Barr, his attorney general, despite the fact that all of these people that he trusted
I have to
in
end.
his government,
If you're
when he
watching on
planted
Kick, I'm
his
going to
team
raid you
looking
guys
for
into Destiny.
everybody that
If
he
you're
trusted
watching on
to do election
YouTube,
fraud.
you can go to
They
his
all said
channel
that
to
it wasn't
finish this
fair.
off, but I got to
Still said it was
go
there.
because I got to
What
cook
would it
dinner.
take for you
All right?
to be convinced
I love
that
you guys
Donald
very
Trump was
much. It's been
knowingly
very fun.
repeating false claims about
Catch
the
you guys
election?
tomorrow.
He was only repeating them so that he could stay in power. What would you need to actually prove his state of mind there?
First of all, you were the one who said earlier that the reason why Trump didn't order the military, the intelligence community to act to protect him is because they were essentially